News. Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 28th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akwe.
Well, shocking new data from the ONS reveals the UK population is set to rise to 72.5 million by 2032, driven almost entirely by net migration. That's a 5 million person increase in the next decade.
Two-tier policing claims dismissed as right-wing and plans to revive widespread deployment of non-crime hate incidents. We'll have all the details from a leaked Home Office review.
And panic across Western tech markets as Chinese AI company develops the most downloaded app in America. State-of-the-art DeepSeek has been produced for a fraction of the cost of American companies, and Donald Trump has raised the alarm bell.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
Why are we seeing a decline in traditional British pie and mash shops in the capital?
Well, it's a busy day of stories in this side of the Atlantic, the other side of the Atlantic, and in our pie shops too. But it's the population question that I think is leading the show really today. 5 million more people by 2032. It's an extraordinary rise.
Well, and also, well, look at us now in this country. We don't really have the facilities to even deal with the population we have now. If you've ever tried to get a doctor's appointment, or if you're looking at the school situation, all of these things that we are dealing with on a daily basis, 5 million more people. We don't even have houses. Angela Rayner's 1.5 million homes in 5 years, or however many years she said she'll do it in, it's going to be nothing.
It starts to sound like a very low target, doesn't it? Is it like she should be building many more than 1.5 million homes if we're going to have 5 million more people in the country?
But it's not, I mean, we need to do something about it. The reality is it is caused mainly by migration, and we have an immigration crisis here, people coming here on small boats. The Conservative Party did a disgraceful job with terms of legal migration, letting in almost a million. So I'm looking at this thinking, instead of the labelling of calling people racist and far right, which I think the people need to drop that now and start really focusing on the reality of how to deal with a large population.
It is extraordinary that actually our birth rate has been falling. The number of children that are being born in this country has almost never been lower, and yet the population is expanding massively. These two facts should not go together in any rational world, but they are going together because of the migration system that we have.
Well, they were saying that 1 in 4 in this country were not born in this country now. So, I think if we are going to enable and allow this mass migration into this country, then I think we need to start focusing on British values and do what they do in the States when, you know, swear allegiance to the British way of living and all the things that otherwise people are not going to be happy with this at all.
No, I think there's some big questions to ask. Well, we'll have some leading politicians on the show to put those questions to the people making the decisions. But get involved. gbnews.com/your say is the way to join the conversation. All to come, of course, after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Police should record more non-crime hate incidents, according to a leaked Home Office report, despite earlier orders to stop over fears over the impact of free speech. The counter-extremism report dismisses claims of two-tier policing as a right-wing extremist narrative. The review, ordered by the Home Secretary, goes on to say that grooming gangs are an alleged problem frequently exploited by the far right. Meanwhile, Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffiths told GB News the report's conclusion is disturbing.
The Home Secretary needs to publish this immediately so that we can all see for ourselves what and who it is that's saying these non-crime hate incidents, these attack and waste of police resources, something a Conservative Home Secretary stopped. And there's clearly a cell within the Home Office that is not concerned about ordinary crime, ordinary policing, in favour of this ideological approach to non-crime hate incidents. They're wrong. That's not where we should be putting our police resources. And the Home Secretary needs to come to Parliament today, publish this report and explain who it is that keeps coming up with this idea.
Sir Keir Starmer has responded, saying when it comes to extremism, it's important to focus resources on threats faced by the UK.
I think when it comes to extremism, it's very important that we are focused on the threat so we can deploy our resource properly, and therefore we're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme. And they need to be factored in. So that's the focus. In the end, what this comes down to is safety and security of people across the United Kingdom, and that's my #1 focus.
Meanwhile, teens who participated in the summer riots were primarily driven by curiosity and the thrill of the moment, according to new research. The Children's Commissioner said the involvement of some children was spontaneous and unconsidered and had less to do with the online misinformation or far-right ideology. Violence broke out across the country in the days and weeks following the murders of 3 children at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport in July 2024. The UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032. That's up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data published today assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year from mid-2028. The projections also highlight an increasingly ageing population, with the number of people aged over 85 projected to nearly double to 3.3 million by 2047. In other news, the driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nuria Sajad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges, but the girl's family said they were unconvinced by the investigation, and in October the force said it would reopen its inquiry. Now, food prices have seen their fastest monthly jump since April last year. Latest figures show prices have increased by 0.5% since December 2024. It marks the biggest increase for 8 months, with experts warning it could be an early sign of what's to come in 2025. 2 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil supporters disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest starring Sigourney Weaver. The protest unfolded at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane last night when two activists entered the stage with an orange banner reading, "Over 1.5 degrees is a global shipwreck." This was a reference to the recent announcement that 2024 had been the warmest on record globally and the first full year when the average temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The Met Police said a 42-year-old woman and a 60-year-old man are being held in custody on suspicion of aggravated trespass. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Nana.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past midday. Now, a leaked Home Office report shows police have been advised to ramp up recording non-crime hate incidents. This despite public orders to stop over free speech concerns.
Now, the review was ordered by the Home Secretary, and in the report it claims that of two-tier policing, these are dismissed, as well as far-right extremist narrative. Prime Minister says his main priority is to keep Brits safe.
When it comes to extremism, it's very important that we are focused on the threat so we can deploy our resource properly, and therefore we're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme, and they need to be factored in. So that's the focus. In the end, what this comes down to is safety and security of people across the United Kingdom, and that's my number one focus.
Strange report, leaked ahead of time, that seems to be suggesting people who even argue that there may have, in the history of the United Kingdom, been two-tiered policing, that police might have treated some groups differently from other groups. Apparently that makes you far right, according to this report. But joining us now for more is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, this is a bit of an embarrassing moment for the government.
Yes, it really is. They want to talk about growth, their number one mission, but that is being derailed today by this leaked report. Now, worth saying that it was commissioned by the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, in August, following the riots that followed those horrific Southport murders. The Home Office called it a rapid analytical sprint, and it was carried out by officials within the Home Office. Now, it hasn't been published. We don't know if it ever will be. The government are saying that they are rejecting the findings, but there's several of them that are very striking. Its remit was to work out how to better counter extremism, and it's made 38 recommendations. Now, among the things it says, which I think are controversial, it says that claims of two-tier policing are an extreme right-wing narrative. It talks about the grooming gangs, or rape gangs, let's call them what they are, and it says that right-wing extremists, quote, frequently exploit the rape gangs scandal, which it describes as alleged group-based sexual abuse. I think the word alleged is quite something, given that we know many people have gone to jail for this, many more potentially still walking around who maybe should go to jail. So really nothing alleged about this. But they say that the far right use this to promote anti-Muslim sentiment. And finally, it urges that the police record more non-crime hate incidents. Now, that's something that the last government had pushed back on, that said that the police should only be recording these if there was a serious risk of harm. That frankly, the police are very, very stretched, not having a great record of solving actual crimes, and shouldn't really be involved in delving into things that are not even crimes. So I think not surprising that the Home Office are now pushing back on this, but I think it does raise real questions about the sort of mindset of some of the people working within the Home Office. Worth saying that the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has raised an urgent question. So the Home Secretary or somebody from the Home Office will be summoned to Parliament this afternoon. We'll hopefully hear a lot more about what exactly is behind this report and some of those quite controversial findings.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary when you put it in black and white there. It's in the same report, it says group-based sexual abuse is alleged, rape gangs are alleged, and on the other hand, non-crime hate incidents should be expanded. That appears to me, from a first reading of it, to be saying, look less at the actual crime and look more at the non-crime. I mean, the government can't accept this, surely.
No, they can't. And I mean, they have said that it has not been formally agreed. And the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, has gone further than that and absolutely said that they are rejecting these recommendations. But it is quite astonishing, Tom, as you say, that non-crime hate incidents, it wants to see more of those. But the rape gangs, where we know that dozens of people have gone to jail, it's talking about this sexual abuse as being alleged, quite extraordinary, and judging by the comments from GBNews viewers, has absolutely gone down like a ton of bricks. The Conservatives, of course, absolutely up in arms, saying that this is totally the wrong approach. Certainly, some of what it's talking about, extremism isn't limited, is it, to people who are Islamists or far right. You have people who are extremist, misogynist, for example, environmental extremists, and so on and so forth. But I think that some of the things within this report really will be very worrying to many people.
Well, Catherine Forster, thanks so much for that overview, live from Westminster, of course.
Well, joining us now is security expert Professor Anthony Glees. Professor, I'm listening to this report and I'm thinking, especially with the non-crime hate incidents, how are they going to police all of this? Because remember what happened to Hamza Yusuf? He changed the rules in Scotland, and suddenly, in terms of hate crime, and he was then the most reported person to the police because of it. Then the police were inundated, thousands of people contacting the police. How is this even possible to do any of this stuff that this report is implying that should be done?
No, it's all complete nonsense, I'm afraid, and the government is tying itself up in knots, trying to, dissociate itself from a report that the Home Office itself produced. And I think the idea that there should be these kind of prevent policies on anything other than the prevention of violent extremism, the prevention of terrorism, would be completely ridiculous. So people are allowed to have extreme views. We may not like them. The people you showed in your film barging into that play in the West End and spoiling an evening out for people. These people should be dealt with severely. There's no doubt about it. But they're not terrorists. They're not killing people like Axel Rutagabana was. And I'm also totally mystified by the fact that the Prime Minister continues to make the point that there is a new category of lone wolf that the law needs to be changed in order to track. It is time, really, to talk about this in the correct light. Yes, Sir Keir is right to say we need to focus resources on the real threat of violent extremism and terrorism. That's right. And so that means all these other things are chaff and can be basically ignored. But he then goes on to say there's this new terrorist issue of lone wolf extremism. Well, we've had lone wolves for ages. And in my opinion, I can't look into the Prime Minister's mind, but in my opinion, all this is coming out of a refusal to accept that whether or not Rutaganbana was an Islamist when he carried out those appalling atrocities in Southport, we can't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. But it was clear that there was sufficient evidence to suspect that he might be on the fateful interview that never took place on the 26th of April 2021. Remember, he was referred 3 times to the Prevent cops. 3 times they refused to look into him. But by the 26th of April, there was clear evidence from the schools, who were doing their job admirably, that he was downloading Islamist material, had a history of violence and knives. And what did the counter-terrorist cops do, the Prevent cops do? They didn't go and interview him. So that would have been the stage to catch him.
And those will be huge questions for the inquiry, no doubt. But Anthony, I want to get you just finally on one other point in our limited time, and this is what the report refers to as 2-tier policing, as if anyone who says that the police might behave towards one group differently to how they behave to another group, as if that is a signifier that there is extremism in your worldview. So if you say the way that the police responded to the Black Lives Matter protests during COVID was different from the way that the police responded to the Sarah Everard vigil during COVID, if you point out that difference, you're an extremist.
Oh, you're far right.
I mean, what mindset are the people who are writing this report living in?
Well, of course, serious problems of judgment. But remember, Robin Simcox, the Commissioner for Preventing Extremism, went to Southport quite recently and said the main purpose of his job was to prevent racism. No, the main purpose of his job is to prevent terror attacks, and see that prevent. After all, the clue is in the name. It's meant to prevent terror attacks. It's not meant to combat racism or any of these other things. What there needs to be is a proper clean out of all the people, and I have to say, a man like Robin Simcox was appointed by the previous Conservative government. So you need to look at all these people. They're entertaining some ridiculous ideas. I don't blame them for thinking blue skies thinking. They didn't intend this report to be leaked, but they have shown serious errors of judgment. And, you know, when a pointy-headed professor gets something seriously wrong, you smile politely, but you never ask him to speak to you again. And in the case of Home Office officials, the same should apply. There's a serious problem out there, and instead people are ticking boxes, worrying their little heads over whether it's ideology or not ideology. I mean, for goodness sake, you know, you can be a professor of politics and not know if ideology is coming. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it needs to be treated like a duck. We need more common sense in Britain. And I actually think people of this country are totally fed up with not being allowed to say this word and that word, and it's Islamophobic and alleged and this.
Listen, we're running out of time, but it's so good to hear your views. That's security expert, Professor Anthony Gleeson.
Who we would never call a pointy-headed professor.
No, it's not pointy, it's rounded.
His head is screwed on like a proper professor.
Well, but he's right, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
With spending time on definitions and does this go into that and does that go to... Just get on with it. We actually have enough laws. We've got enough. We've got everything, all the scope we need to catch these people. The problem here is the joined-up thinking between the departments, the schools, all the different things around prevent. They're not talking to each other, and people are falling through the...
It's clear that this inquiry will find things could have been done with current powers that exist today and that simply weren't done. But much more to get through, of course, this afternoon on Good Afternoon Britain. Indeed, the Chancellor, don't call it a relaunch. No, she's making a defining speech, a career-defining speech tomorrow to turn the page on a turbulent 6 months in the British economy. Well, what exactly is this totally not a relaunch battle plan? That now.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So
Now,
these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. One of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite, she wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, oh, it's happened to me.
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost $700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet? I just
and then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, this can't be true, come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she's had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past midday. Now, the Chancellor will be making a career-defining speech tomorrow, trying to turn the page on a turbulent 6 months in the British economy.
Good luck with that one. That's, of course, ahead of her major announcements tomorrow. She's meeting with some of the biggest business leaders in the UK today in a bid to repair what many have described as a broken relationship between Rachel Reeves and the business community.
Well, with us now is the chairman of Gales Bakery, Luke Johnson. Luke, you're a successful businessman. What do you make of really the first 6 or 7 months that this government has overseen in the British economy? What's gone right? What's gone wrong?
As far as I'm aware, nothing has gone right, and almost everything they've done has gone wrong. I think they are a disaster. I would accept they inherited a pretty awful set of circumstances. Post-war high levels of tax and debt, much higher interest rates than we have experienced before. So, there were many of the elements that could lead to a recession. I'm now convinced there will be a recession in 2025. We've probably already entered one. I think the mood amongst the entrepreneurs and investors I speak about this country is more depressing than I can remember in 40 years in business.
But what about... But Keir Starmer set it up and told us that things would get worse before they get better. So do you not feel that there's a way that, even though they've talked about the £22 billion black hole, which is the thing they're trying to fill, is there a feeling that things will get worse, but then there is an upshot to this?
Well, obviously, all economies go in cycles, and, most recessions only last 18 months, so probably in 26 things will improve. But meantime, we've got to get there. And unquestionably, unemployment is rising. Investment in this country is faltering. And the sentiment, which is all important, the level of confidence, is falling. And there is this stark comparison now with America, where it's utterly clear that the new administration there is full of optimism and confidence, and so they will unquestionably boost investment, they will boost employment, they will cheer on the entrepreneurs and enterprise. Meantime, this government have in front of us the employment rights bill, 150 pages of additional red tape placed on businesses. You know, that's fine for big companies to cope with, but small, medium-sized businesses that don't necessarily have large HR departments, 150 pages of extra regulation is not going to encourage them to create jobs. And so, you know, we will see a decline in work, we will see a decline in taxes as a consequence. This government will not meet their expectations for growth. And so the risk is we get into a vicious spiral of a weak currency, which means we import inflation. We can't lower interest rates because of that. We then have to put up more taxes because the tax take is not what was expected. And this government, I think, have no appetite to do what's necessary. What's necessary is to cut taxes and regulation and, most importantly, possibly of all, dump the entire net zero project. Electricity costs in America are 1/5 of what they are in this country. Britain has the highest commercial electricity costs of any developed nation, and we are crushing industries, manufacturing and energy-intensive industries
no
like
wonder we
chemicals
don't make any steel, we
cement.
don't make any chemicals, and the chemical industry across Europe has been in precipitous
decline. If this government pursue their sort of bigger state, unions first mentality, of course entrepreneurs will flee the country. The talent will go, they will not attract the investment, and the prospects will be bleak.
Now, can I ask you about your business? Gales, of course, has been successful in recent years. It's probably bucked the trend of many of the sort of high street shops that we've seen. Why is that, and what sort of headwinds is Gales facing right now? You employ lots of people. Your energy costs are probably quite high being a bakery. What is the economic situation looking like for you?
I would say that consumer sentiment is fragile at best, and inevitably all businesses that employ lots of people, like we do, thousands of people, particularly in areas like hospitality with a lot of part-timers, are facing a sharp increase in national living wages and a devastating increase in national insurance, particularly among the lower paid, which is a huge disincentive to hire. So, of course, people will outsource, will automate, will find other ways to get things done. And this is a destructive spiral.
Sainsbury's is cutting 3,000 jobs, we learned this year. Will Gales have to let people go?
We are a smaller business and we are not going to cut jobs. We're going to continue to grow and employ more people. And we're very fortunate. We have the right business model, I believe, and I remain optimistic for our prospects.
But your growth projection might be still inclining, but less steeply than it was before.
Possibly. I think across the entire hospitality industry, which is huge, worth over 100 billion a year, as I say, the mood is dark. And many businesses are curtailing their plans, and others, I'm sorry to say, are going bust. And this is very depressing. And I don't believe this government understands the entrepreneurial mindset, and the idea that they are all about growth is a delusion.
All right, Luke, thank you very much. That's Luke Johnson. He is the chairman of Gales Bakery. You didn't bring one of those little pistachio cakes.
No.
I'm very upset. They are my favourite.
Next time. Well, no, what a fascinating perspective. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there is plenty more to come on today's show.
There's panic across the Western tech markets as Chinese AI company develops the most downloaded app in America. State-of-the-art DeepSeek has been produced for a fraction of the cost of American companies.
And we'll have the very latest from Downing Street with our political editor, Christopher Hope. He's been asking the government about this population explosion. That after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. Your headlines at 12:32. Police should record more non-crime hate incidents, according to a leaked Home Office report, despite earlier orders to stop over fears of the impact on free speech. The counter-extremism report dismisses claims of two-tier policing as a right-wing extremist narrative. The review, ordered by the Home Secretary, goes on to say that grooming gangs are an alleged problem frequently exploited by the far right. Now, the UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032, up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year. Following the release of the figures today, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wants to bring down staggeringly high levels of migration, but will not set arbitrary caps. The driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nuria Sajad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July in 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges. But the girl's family said they were unconvinced by the investigation, and in October the force said it would reopen its inquiry. Donald Trump has called the rise of Chinese company DeepSeek a wake-up call for the US tech industry after its artificial intelligence model triggered shockwaves on Wall Street. DeepSeek says its models are comparable with those from US giants like OpenAI, but potentially a fraction of the cost. That has triggered a fall in various US shares, especially chipmaker Nvidia, which registered a record one-day loss for any company on Wall Street. Responding to the news yesterday, the US president said the latest developments in China's AI industry may be a positive for the US.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
And 2 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil supporters disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest starring Sigourney Weaver. The protest unfolded at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane last night when 2 activists entered the stage with an orange banner reading, "Over 1.5 degrees is a global shipwreck." This was a reference to the recent announcement that 2024 had been the warmest on record globally and the first full year when average temperatures exceeded 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The Met Police said a 42-year-old woman and a 60-year-old man are being held in custody on suspicion of aggravated trespass. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2429 and €1.1928. The price of gold is £2,206.95 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,544 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, also still rather windy across the southwest, and temperatures around about average for the time of year across the country. And the reason for this unsettled weather is all because of this area of low pressure still swirling around the country, dragging in some heavy showers at times. Could be quite a wet day on offer, particularly across parts of Wales, parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, for example. This rain heavy at times, could even see some hail and thunder, particularly across this south. It might be a slightly drier day across parts of northern England, but still across coastal areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, still a fair few showers feeding in here too. As I say, temperatures around about average, if not rather mild across the south, but that being offset by all the heavy rain and the showers. To finish off the day then across Scotland, still plenty of showers moving through. These likely falling as snow across hills and still rather breezy around coastal areas too. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be a little bit drier at times across northern parts of England, but for Wales, central and southern parts of England, still plenty of showers moving through and still once again these turning rather heavy at times and those strong winds still continuing across parts of the southwest. Overnight, however, we'll start to see a gradual ease of the showers, becoming more confined to southern counties as we head towards the morning. Still a fair few moving in across Scotland too, but across the central slice of the UK, largely turning drier. Should see a fair few clear spells overnight too, and that means it's likely to be a chillier night on offer as we head into tonight, particularly under those clearer skies away from the cloud. Heading into tomorrow, there should be more dry weather around, maybe even seeing some sunshine by the afternoon. That's away from the far south, though, as we see another area of low pressure just start to drift some rain in through the English Channel, clipping southern counties as we head into the afternoon. Dry elsewhere, though we still can't rule out some showers, particularly around Scotland, still falling as snow across high ground.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Down, the A51 is closed in both directions along Tandragee Road in Guildford after a tree fell across the road on Friday. The M180 in Lincolnshire is closed westbound from junction 4 for the A15 at Scorby to 3 for the M181 at Scunthorpe, where a lorry's broken down with an oil spill causing queues. On the M1 in South Yorkshire, there are 2 lanes closed southbound at junction 34 at Meadowhall, where cars overturned causing queues. The M1 in Leicestershire is blocked northbound by an accident between junction 23A for the A42 and 24 for the A453 south of Nottingham after an accident causing queues. On the M4 in Cardiff, there's a lane closed for emergency repairs on the eastbound exit at junction 30 at Cardiff Gate for emergency barrier repairs with queues towards there. In Oxfordshire, the eastern bypass road is partly blocked northbound by a breakdown causing queues, and there are delays of up to an hour to the FDS sailings between Dover and Calais. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past midday. Now, live from Downing Street, our political editor Christopher Hope has just been inside that famous black brick building, asking particularly, Chris, I believe, about this population explosion the United Kingdom is set to face.
That's right. Hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. Welcome to another wet Downing Street. We've been speaking to the PM's official spokesman about those extraordinary figures just put out by the Office for National Statistics this morning to remind viewers a rise of 4 million people more arriving than leaving, the net migration figure. That's, of course, that is a projection rather than a projection based on current government policies between 2022 and 2032, up to 72.5 million. We asked the PM at the briefing, PM spokesman at the briefing moments ago, simply, will you try and cap these numbers, stop them going up by so much? Just to remind viewers why these figures matter so much. This government wants to build 1.5 million new homes between now and 2030. Well, that figure is soaked up by the increase over the same period, 1.75 million I've worked out, with some basic maths looking at the current run rate. So the number of new homes will be soaked up by those migration figures. Now, they said to me, the PM said, spokesman said, they are not going to establish an arbitrary cap on the staggeringly high net migration figures. In fact, the spokesman said the word staggeringly high about 6 times in different answers from different journalists. They said the government is committed to bring down net migration from these record levels, they said, and they say the government inherited a position where the previous government had let it reach record levels 4 times higher at the beginning of the last parliament than at the end, and a white paper will be published early this year to end these staggeringly high migration figures. Now, Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, he's responded moments ago on social media saying our quality of life is declining due to the population explosion, he says. It's the biggest issue facing our country. And the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, he says it can and must be stopped from materialising. But I think voters, listeners might be forgiven for discounting what the Tories say, given their complete failure to tackle the issue over the past 14 years.
Christopher, hi, it's me, it's Nana. It's not Emily, but that's fine because I know you can't see me.
Nana, I'm sorry.
That's all right, don't worry about it. I'll get you later. So, But what do they keep having these reports and this and that. Nobody seems to be tackling anything, and in particular tackling the gangs and also dealing with the migration issue. Did they give you a steer on any of the plans that they might put in place to tackle the issue?
Well, no, we've heard they are going to establish a white paper in coming months, so they wouldn't even give us a season for when that might be published, spring, summer, autumn or winter, but coming months. Early this year, we're seeing plans to tackle net migration. They're looking at visas, they're looking at incentivising or getting companies to hire more local workforce. There's obviously mooted plans to tackle the workless number, those who are on benefits who aren't working here, to try and ensure that we do have companies relying on the workforce here. Set against that, though, the issue here is growth. Now, the PM has told cabinet ministers that any new policies should be justified on growing the economy. And of course, as we know, in the past, net migration has been done to fuel economic growth, but making us all poorer on a per capita basis. So there's a tension there between growing the economy, that's what ministers have been told to do, with also controlling net migration.
Yeah, they should really be growing the per capita economy. But Christopher Hope, live from Downing Street. We'll catch up with you a little bit later in the programme. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see. Immigration, whilst it's a good thing, it isn't always a good thing, and it isn't always a net benefit. A lot of people don't realise that one. But $1 trillion were wiped from some of the world's largest technology companies after the emergence of DeepSeek, a cheaper Chinese rival to ChatGPT.
Well, tech giant Nvidia, which was a stronghold in the AI sector, suffered one of the biggest blows to its stock price, which plummeted by 17%, wiping off $500 million in a single day.
Well, President Trump warns American companies not to be complacent.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
Well, we're joined now by the CEO of the AI company Conjecture, Connor Leahy. Connor, there have been some in the Trump orbit who call this Chinese development the Sputnik moment for AI. I mean, the Americans thought they were ahead. Suddenly the Chinese have come out with this system that is cheaper, faster, on some metrics better, and now everyone's panicking. What's going on?
Well, we could definitely say that the technical work done by DeepSeek here is very impressive, but it isn't necessarily novel. The thing with AI systems at the moment is that it is mostly an engineering problem. What this moment really shows us is that there are no real secrets. Like, whenever a new company comes up with a new AI system and they claim it's so much more advanced than all the other ones, it's usually just a maximum of like 2 months behind, 3 months behind the next one. And this is just another reminder of that.
So what makes this particular DeepSeek so much better than, say, ChatGPT? Why is it better? A lot of people saying it is.
So I can't speak for the quality of it. I haven't used it too much myself. But the most impressive thing is their claim that they have built this model on the order of $5 million. This is about an order of magnitude, or even 2 orders of magnitude different from what is the estimated cost of ChatGPT, orders, 50 million to over 100 million. So if this claim is true, which is hard to verify, this means that they were able to get here just at an incredibly low cost. The system itself is very good. Like, it fulfills most standard things you'd want from these AI systems, but for such a low cost. And as far as we could tell, it was mostly just for good engineering. There's no fundamental new radical insight. It's just very good engineering, very well built, and using really, really good techniques.
Now, a lot of people are suggesting that this is going to cause an acceleration in the AI race, in the same way that when the Russians put the first satellite into orbit, all the Americans panicked. Suddenly, so much more funding went into NASA. The Apollo program was begun, and we ended up seeing Americans on the moon. If this is the first beep, boop, primitive satellite from the Chinese that have gone up, what is the equivalent moon landing that we might see from the Americans? I mean, are things going to really step up in terms of funding and development?
I think this is definitely possible, and this is definitely something that many partisans are trying to push very, very hard for obvious, economic interests. There is a very clear moon landing goal, which has been very clearly said by the CEOs of all the main companies, by various partisans, thinkers, including Nobel Prize winners and so on. And that goal is AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. a system which is as smart or smarter than a human in all capacities. If such a system is built, it will quickly be able to develop new AI systems that are even more powerful. And then those more powerful systems can develop new AI systems that are even more powerful. And if such system comes to pass, we will have systems that are vastly more intelligent than humanity, vastly better at business, science, politics, engineering, and everything else. And if such systems get built, we don't know how to control them, which we don't currently know how to do. The future of humanity is looking grim.
That was what Stephen Hawking warned about. I think he was quite right. But then if they're that intelligent, then they can do everything and make all the money. You can just kick back and just relax and enjoy the world.
If they're benevolent. If they treat you as a pet, that's fine. But if they treat you as a nuisance, then that's less fine.
Well, a lot of people say you could just unplug them, but then they might work out how to harness energy from the sun, and then we're in trouble. Connor, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
I was just going to add, important to understand about these systems, you can't just shut them off. If they're smarter than us, well, they know that you want to shut them off, and they will be happy to coordinate with you or maybe some, other foreign country to help keep them turned on. So this is a real threat that we are truly facing, and these companies are irresponsibly racing towards. I hope that people like Donald Trump will take this risk seriously.
He's spoken about that sort of risk in the past, but it's hard to know, because when you're on the exponential, you just don't. I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but it could literally be next week. Connor Leahy, we're going to have to leave it there, but CEO of Conjecture, really appreciate your time on GB News this afternoon.
Right now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Another weather system pushing into parts of Western Europe will bring some further heavy rain and strong winds as we go through tomorrow across parts of Western France, much of Spain and Portugal. It is looking wet and there will be some hill snow around too. Also some wet weather affecting southern Italy, feeding into Greece as well. That being said, as we go through later this week, most places will see something a bit drier and also some decent warmth at times too. So not a total washout of a week. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it's essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plea to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, do you want to start?
Good afternoon. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Stay with us, but lots of you have been getting in touch with your say as well online. Grumpy Grandad, we were talking about growth. He said the only growth this government will see will be their hair. That's if they've got any to begin with.
Someone called Baron von Saracen's Head, goodness me, what a name, has said, when will Labour take responsibility for anything or say something other than blaming the previous government? Well, we might see that from Rachel Reeves tomorrow. This is the big speech. The thing about tomorrow is that the government don't want to say that they've messed up the first 6 months. But it's very obviously a big relaunch. This is the sort of line in the sand. We've been very dour and miserable about everything about the country. From tomorrow, they're going to be all very happy-go-lucky, positive. Rachel Reeves on Sunday said she wanted to bring Donald Trump's boosterism to Britain. I mean, it's quite the U-turn.
Well, also, we had West Streeting calling Nigel Farage a miserablest declinist, as if to say that they are very negative. And obviously now there's going to be a positive spin on things for the Labour Party. So they are trying. I'm not sure whether you can polish something in this manner, because I think it's policy-based, and I think that's the problem. Maybe if she does something policy-wise, like scraps inheritance tax, then she's got a chance.
Yeah, it's hard to be positive when you've just whacked a load of taxes on businesses. But lots more to come in the next hour. Much more on this population boom. How many more million people are coming to the UK? That next.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, also still rather windy across the southwest, and temperatures around about average for the time of year across the country. And the reason for this unsettled weather is all because of this area of low pressure still swirling around the country, dragging in some heavy showers at times. Could be quite a wet day on offer, particularly across parts of Wales, parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, for example. This rain heavy at times, could even see some hail and thunder, particularly across the south. It might be a slightly drier day across parts of northern England, but still across coastal areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, still a fair few showers feeding in here too. As I say, temperatures around about average, if not rather mild across the south, but that being offset by all the heavy rain and the showers. To finish off the day then across Scotland, still plenty of showers moving through, these likely falling as snow across hills and still rather breezy around coastal areas too. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be a little bit drier at times across northern parts of England, but for Wales, central and southern parts of England, still plenty of showers moving through, and still once again these turning rather heavy at times, and those strong winds still continuing across parts of the southwest. Overnight, however, we'll start to see a gradual ease of the showers, becoming more confined to southern counties as we head towards the morning. Still a fair few moving in across Scotland too, but across the central slice of the UK, largely turning drier. Should see a fair few clear spells overnight too, and that means it's likely to be a chillier night on offer as we head into tonight, particularly under those clearer skies away from the cloud. Heading into tomorrow, there should be more dry weather around, maybe even seeing some sunshine by the afternoon. That's away from the far south, though, as we see another area of low pressure just start to drift some rain in through the English Channel, clipping southern counties as we head into the afternoon. Dry elsewhere, though we still can't rule out some showers, particularly around Scotland, still falling as snow across high ground.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As we kick off 2025, many of us might be thinking about a bit of a wardrobe refresh, especially if you're over 50 and you feel like the high street doesn't quite cater to you.
Indeed. That's where our next guest, Mel Tillett, comes in. She's in the studio with us now.
Mel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I love that you are this accidental influence. I love that you said that's the first time.
Yeah, it is. That's the first time I've heard it.
You can have that
yes,
free on
thank
TV.
you so much. It's quite true.
Tell us about your following. Obviously, an influencer that many people might typically think of would be someone in their teens, someone in their 20s, someone who's particularly social media savvy, using TikTok. Talk to us about your brand of influencer.
Well, our influencer, my kind of influence is over the older age group, the over 50s. For my business, I do a lot of live videos. I'll do them early in the morning at 7:30, which sounds ridiculous, but I know my ladies are up and about at that time having a cup of coffee or whatever that might be. And just being honest about day-to-day life. So my dogs are running about, my grandchildren are even sometimes in them, one thing and another. So it's just been purely by accident that I've got this really nice, loyal following, and I get lovely messages off ladies. I'll do things like, I'll tell them when I'm going for a mammogram, and I'll say, come on, everybody go for your mammogram.
That's brilliant.
All sort of health-conscious things. I've been a lot heavier than I am now, and I've slimmed down and lost some weight. I've been talking about that journey as well. And then ladies will ask me questions on the videos, and we chat about all sorts of different things. And now I'm getting messages every day, and people are loving the clothing ranges that we do. And it's just, I started off as a business, that's purely what I did, but it's turned out into this other, I get recognised places I go now, which is really weird.
It must be a huge benefit to your business as well.
We employ around about 50 people.
Wow.
And I'm quite open to my audience and saying, you know, while you keep buying offers, while you're loving our products and our clothing, you're keeping 50 people in jobs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 28th of January. I'm Nana Acquia.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Shocking new data from the ONS reveals the UK's population is set to rise to 72.5 million by 2033, driven almost entirely by net migration. That is 5 million, a 5 million person increase in the next 10 years.
Elsewhere, two-tier policing claims dismissed as right-wing and plans to revive widespread deployment of non-crime hate incidents. Yes, we'll have all the details from a leaked Home Office review.
And panic across the Western tech markets as Chinese AI company develops the most downloaded app in America. State-of-the-art DeepSeek has been produced for a fraction of the cost of American companies. Donald Trump has raised the alarm bell.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
Back in Blighty, why are we seeing a decline in traditional British pie and mash shops in our capital city? $5 million extra people by 2032, 1.5 million new homes by 2030.
Let me do the math.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we could have 4 people per house.
It's not...
But then we'd end the period with exactly the same number of people per house. We'd still have the same housing crisis that we do today.
But the issue is more the infrastructure that cannot support it and can't even support it now. And, you know, that was Angela Rayner, and, of course, the Labour Party's pledged 1.5 million homes, although there was that little faux pas where it didn't sound like it was going to go to British people, but it would just be... And I don't know where they are with that. But what do you think with regard to the population? We need to sort out the immigration crisis. We need to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do something about the channel crossing issue, which I think, even though the contribution towards that figure appears small right now, I think that we're going to see an explosion in that, especially if the government doesn't take it seriously.
Well, isn't also one of the issues here is that the numbers that we see coming across the channel, the official numbers, are those that have been picked up and processed and are in the asylum system. I mean, we don't know the numbers of people who are here that aren't in the official asylum system.
Well, the real numbers are obviously going to be far greater because we obviously don't record... We won't be able to record all of them, and some people will be getting through. We also need to sort out legal migration because that was a real problem, but, hey...
We're one of the few countries that doesn't count people out as well as counting people in. So aside from the small boat illegal migration problem, which is, of course, significant, there are also people who come over on holiday visas and just simply overstay their visas. There could be millions of people overstaying visas.
Oh, of course there are.
And because we don't count people out, because you don't have to show your passport when you leave the country, if you're a foreigner leaving the country to go back to your home country, we simply don't know the numbers.
I think really what we need to do now, because when was the last census? Should we have
2021, because it was delayed for COVID.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think we need another census to see how many people are actually in this country. But then, will they fill it in? If you're here, you're not meant to be here, you won't fill it in, will you?
Well, do get involved in the discussion. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. But until then, and indeed after then, and throughout the rest of the programme, well, until then, it's your news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your headlines. Police should record more non-crime hate incidents, according to a leaked Home Office report, despite earlier orders to stop over fears of the impact on free speech. The counter-extremism report dismisses claims of two-tier policing as a right-wing extremist narrative. The review, ordered by the Home Secretary, goes on to say that grooming gangs are an alleged problem frequently exploited by the far right. Meanwhile, Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith told GB News the report conclusion is disturbing.
The Home Secretary needs to publish this immediately so that we can all see for ourselves what and who it is that's saying these non-crime hate incidents, these attack and waste of police resources, something a Conservative Home Secretary stopped. And there's clearly a cell within the Home Office that is not concerned about ordinary crime, ordinary policing, in favour of this ideological approach to non-crime hate incidents. They're wrong. That's not where we should be putting our police resources. And the Home Secretary needs to come to Parliament today, publish this report and explain who it is that keeps coming up with this idea.
Sir Keir Starmer has responded, saying when it comes to extremism, it's important to focus resources on the threats faced by the UK.
I think when it comes to extremism, it's very important that we are focused on the threat so we can deploy our resource properly, and therefore we're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously, that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme. And they need to be factored in. So that's the focus. In the end, what this comes down to is safety and security of people across the United Kingdom, and that's my #1 focus.
The UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032. That's up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year from mid-2028. Following the release of the figures today, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wants to bring down staggeringly high levels of migration, but will not set arbitrary caps. Meanwhile, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said the government must do more.
Forecasts the ONS put out are completely unacceptable. They don't need to happen and they should not happen. What Kemi Badenoch and I have said is there should be a legally binding annual cap on the number of visas that we issue to get these numbers right down. You know, we have 9 million working age people here in the UK that are not in the workforce. We need to see those people getting to work, and we need to see more investment in technology and mechanisation instead of importing very large numbers of low-skill wages. That is not the right thing to do. We need to see change, and we've got a plan to do that.
In other news, the driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nuria Sajad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July in 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges, but the girl's family said they were unconvinced by the investigation, and in October the force said it would reopen its inquiry. Now, 2 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil supporters disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest starring Sigourney Weaver. The protest unfolded at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, last night when 2 activists entered the stage with an orange banner reading "Over 1.5 degrees is a global shipwreck." This was a reference to the recent announcement that 2024 had been the warmest on record globally and the first full year when the average temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The Met Police said a 42-year-old woman and a 60-year-old man are being held in custody on suspicion of aggravated trespass. Wyn Evans is set to be axed from the Strictly Come Dancing live tour following his crude remarks to Jeanette Manrara. That's according to reports in the Sun newspaper. It follows his apology after being caught on camera joking about having a threesome with a professional dancer during the tour launch event on the 16th of January. It's understood BBC Studios will be releasing a statement later today. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Nana.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 9 minutes past 1. Now, the UK's population is set to soar to 72.5 million people by mid-2032.
The projection released by the Office of National Statistics is driven almost entirely by net migration, with a 5 million increase in the next 10 years.
Well, let's discuss this with our political editor, Christopher Hope. And Christopher, you've been asking the government about this today. What do they say about this seemingly huge and inexorable rise?
Yes. Hi, Tom. Hi, Nana, from Downing Street, a very wet Downing Street. We spoke to the PM's official spokesman about an hour ago. Of course, the Cabinet met this morning. Net migration did not come up in that meeting. Other issues did, though. We asked simply, why won't this government put a cap or announce a cap on the numbers coming through the front door? As you say there, 4.9 million more arriving, settling here between 2022 and 2032. The average level of 340,000 a year. Most, though, the majority of those are increasing in England, up nearly 8% in England. So why on earth announce a cap? The government said it won't do a cap. It said that it will be setting out plans in the future in a white paper, but they made very clear that they feel they can't establish a cap because it may not be enforceable. They call the figure staggeringly high. They said this government the net migration figures are four times higher than they were at the start of the cabinet. But concerns about why they can't set one. They feel that the Tories tried and failed with a cap over 14 years. Why should they try? Already the politicians are piling in on these figures. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, he says our quality of life is declining due to the population explosion. it's the biggest issue facing our country. He says that because, of course, what he means is that our GDP per capita, as we have more people here, the individual benefit of that is weakened by having more people here. That's why he says that. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he says it can and must be stopped from materialising. And he's backing a legal cap on visas each year. But of course, I think many might discount what the Tories say, given they failed over 14 years, despite repeatedly saying they would cap migration, to get anywhere near below 100,000, which is their policy for most of the last decade. These are figures from the ONS. They are projections based on current government policy, not predictions. The government's bringing out a white paper on net migration in coming months. That should offer ways to try and encourage companies here to hire more local labour and try and ensure that the pool of workers here are taking the jobs that are currently offered to foreigners. But there could be a problem here, finally, to you both. The government has said today that all new policies must encourage growth, or there may be question marks about them. So a new growth requirement on all government policies. The problem with that is, of course, is with net migration, companies feel they can only grow with foreign labour being brought in because that's cheaper. So there could be a battle there between the issue of growing the economy and controlling net migration.
All right, Christopher Hope, thank you very much. He's GBNews' political editor. Well, joining us now, Labour activist Chris Worrell. Chris Worrell, thank you very much for joining us. Chris, I want to ask you about this. Look, it feels like the government are kicking the can down the road. They're now going to have a white paper, which, all right, fair enough, but that's going to take a couple more months. In the meantime, there doesn't feel to be any action. We've seen how Donald Trump has gone straight in, made moves and done things. Why can't the Labour government just get on with it? There's an issue. They've talked about smashing the gangs. The problem is mass migration, also legal migration. Can they not just get on with something, at least, instead of just talking all the time?
Well, no, you know, the dooms to woke riot are out there like acting like the sky's falling. When net migration is forecast to go up 0.7% a year for the next 10 years. You know, the Britain's Full Brigade don't mind they want foreign nationals, you know, doing their nursing. But we're talking about 0.7%, you know, it's like, oh no, too many. And we grow up. And at the end of the day, we're seeing, you know, the illegal immigrants that are being removed quicker than you can say Rwanda plan. And, you know, we've seen record levels of deportations under the Labour government. We've seen, foreign national offenders removals up 23%. Early removal schemes, that's up to 31%, and legal working visits into these places of work where they are illegal workers, that's up 32%.
Chris, it's perfectly true.
So I need to stop there.
Okay.
Sorry, Chris, but there's no need to be rude now, because I'm quite grown up. I'm probably older than you, and what I'm seeing here is that this country cannot sustain the current levels of migration, even though you are saying it's small. We haven't got enough houses, we haven't got enough school places, we haven't got enough of anything for the people who live here. So something really seriously needs to be done. Even the government would admit that.
Well, net migration's fallen 20% last year. It's set to fall further. What the Labour Party's putting forward is an immigration white paper plan where they're going to reform the points-based system and focus on creating roles for UK nationals. At the end of the day, the Boris wave that we've seen has seen record levels of immigration at 906,000. If we're looking at how much we're building, and I know Tom and Nana, you care about this too, we built last year about 200,000 homes, 2.4 households per home. Do the math. We're about 400,000 immigrants coming in. We're putting pressure on existing stock. Now, we're seeing the changes that the Labour Party are making in this regard, and they're only for the better, and that's going to be better for the British public. And
Chris, I think it's a fair point you make that, of course, more houses need to be built, not just for the people coming in, but frankly for the people who already live here too. But if we're going to have 5 million more people come into the country, and we're only going to build 1.5 million more homes, that's not going to touch the sides of the problem that we have. I mean, surely either the number of people coming in needs to be lower, or the number of the housing target that this government has set itself needs to be far, far higher.
Well, you cited a 10-year number there, Tom, and at the end of the day, what we're seeing is we're coming from a very low base. The high-skilled visa worker policies are going to be reviewed, so we're focused on high-skilled labour, focusing on AI. But you're right, you know, the Tory government has absolutely decimated house building. The Labour Party has put a plan in place to get building again, and we need to build homes for high-skilled immigrants and also British nationals too. So we can't be sort of sitting here doing pub math when, you know, the Tories have literally created a huge mess that Labour Party are putting in place, you know, policies to make that better.
Well, nobody would argue with that one. Yes, they did create a massive mess. But I just feel that I'm hearing so much talk and talk and talk. I mean, we're 6 months down the road with this Labour government, and the problem of immigration is continuing. I mean, we've had more people coming across via small boats than ever. And I know right now, out of the total, it's a minuscule amount. But the point is that if we don't control it, then that will become a bigger amount, which, again, is a problem for us in this country.
Well, we're seeing the level of deportations for failed asylum seekers and national offenders going up. I mean, if the Doomsters are still moaning about that, what do they want? A parade every time a flight takes off?
It's perfectly possible to have higher... We do have higher deportations now, but we also have higher numbers of illegal migrants coming in. So it stands to reason we'd have higher numbers of deportations, because the number coming in on small boats is 30% higher this year than it was last year.
You'd be complaining, Tom, if our foreign national arrests and deportations of illegal immigrants was going down, but it's going up. And we're seeing it with the Border Security Command. Yes, we're dealing with an issue that transcends borders, and the Border Security Command is going to be focused on dealing with that. And at the end of the day, 0.7% increase in immigration and population, isn't going to be harming the economy when we need to be growing at the same time. But we do need to build the houses to make that happen.
Well, we'll see what happens with that, because we've still got a load of people in hotels now to deal with too. So, you know, I just think it's a bit of a mess. Labour activist Chris Worrell, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to move on now, because Rotherham grooming gang rapist Afsar Bostan, who was recalled to prison after breaching his licensing conditions, is back up for parole.
He was convicted of rape in 2018 and he was jailed for 9 years, but granted parole in August 2022. Charlie has the latest. Charlie Peters joins us now.
So Afsar Bostan, his case has been one of controversy for so many years, because not only did it take a National Crime Agency investigation in 2018 to finally get a conviction after well over a decade since these rapes took place, but we also found out during his original prison sentence that he was actually moved to an open prison, and the survivor in this case, the victim Elizabeth, not her real name, was not informed. He was then released on licence conditions, barely halfway through his sentence for raping a child, a 13-year-old girl, in a flat who he'd drugged and plied with alcohol as well. And while he was on those licence conditions on his release, he was seen barely a mile away from the victim's home. He was eventually recalled into prison last January, but we've uncovered today that he's back up for his parole hearing tomorrow. So he could be released twice, well within that 9-year sentence, having already breached those conditions first time around on his original release. We're also being told by Elizabeth that she has to face him in a victim impact statement for this parole hearing tomorrow. He will be there via video link facing her as she delivers this statement. He'll have a solicitor, but she has no one. She's told us that she wasn't explained sufficiently to her rights during the process. She didn't realise that she had to go through with this.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
So this is a victim who was, as a child, abused by this man, presumably had to give a statement at his initial trial, and now a third time will have to go through that sort of trauma just to make sure a man who was less than 9 years ago sentenced to prison for 9 years... in order to keep him behind bars, she is having to go through that pain and that trauma again and again and again.
Yeah, and she's told me that she feels terrified about this process. Now, we've been told by government sources that the process is always taken where survivors are informed of the process that is in play when they have these victim liaison links with survivors ahead of parole hearings. But the survivor, Elizabeth, has told us that she was not informed directly. She had to actually seek support from the Maggie Oliver Foundation in order to fully understand her rights. And Tom and Anna, this discussion about this 9-year sentence, him being released potentially twice within that term for abusing a girl as part of that grooming gang, it comes at the same time as about an hour ago, Robert Jenrick was in the House of Commons at Justice Questions. He was speaking to Shabana Mahmood, the Lord Chancellor. He asked her if she would commit to whole life sentences for grooming gang members, and I think we have a clip we can play of that now.
2 weeks ago, 3 grooming gang members were sentenced for the most appalling rapes of children at Bradford Crown Court, but they only received 6, 7 and 9-year sentences, respectively. 6 years. out on licence in 4 for the rape of a child. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that these sentences are disgracefully short? And will she commit to using the sentencing review to mandate full life sentences for these evil people? If she will, she'll have our support.
Justice Secretary?
Well, let me say we have a shared objective in making sure that these evil individuals feel the full force of the law. He will understand. I will not comment on individual sentencing decisions. I would hope that that is a decision that the Shadow Lord Chancellor might also wish to reflect upon. It is not appropriate given our collective commitment to the independence of the judiciary. However, as I said in response to earlier questions, we will be legislating to make grooming an aggravating factor, and this government will make sure that victims get the justice they deserve.
Now, Mr Jenrick there referring to a case a couple of weeks ago in Bradford Crown Court. Those sentences you heard actually weaker, as it were, than the 9-year sentence handed to Ashgar Bostan. He's up for a parole hearing tomorrow. He could be back on the streets in South Yorkshire in no time at all.
Oh, crikey. Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Yeah, and really good to keep up the reporting on this issue. I mean, just because other channels aren't, you know, doing it anymore, it's so important that we continue highlighting what continues to go on across this country.
And why, if she had to give evidence, why she has to face him, why she can't just do it in another room or somewhere where he's not available.
Well, Charlie Peters, thanks very much indeed for joining us. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme.
Two-tier policing claims dismissed as right-wing and plans to revive widespread deployment of non-crime hate incidents. We'll have the details from a leaked Home Office review.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
He's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Me.
Oh, there he goes.
Nice.
He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
Nice.
Probably slightly more meaningful than having the
very.
Oh, come on, Trey. You want to get Feathers McGraw?
Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind of, you know, when you go abroad and you know Beef or Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that, or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored
ones.
of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but yeah, I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, you know, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean
I haven't got
something.
anything.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll get something.
I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out with
that. I'd be able to pronounce
a disaster could happen. Then I walk out. Oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
Covered in them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 1. Now, a leaked Home Office report shows police have been advised to ramp up the recording of non-crime hate incidents, despite public orders to stop such incidents over free speech concerns.
Now, the review was ordered by the Home Secretary, and in the report claims of two-tier policing are dismissed as right-wing extremist, and it's just ridiculous. Now, the Prime Minister says his main priority is to keep Brits safe.
When it comes to extremism, it's very important that we are focused on the threat so we can deploy our resource properly, and therefore we're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously, that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme, and they need to be factored in. So that's the focus. In the end, what this comes down to is safety and security of people across the United Kingdom, and that's my number one focus.
It's an interesting position for the government to take, that a broader array of extremism should be looked at. I think that there is a legitimate point to raise it. Should we look at the potential for environmentalist terrorism, as well as Islamist and far-right? Should we look at the potential for sort of the loners like Axel Ruda-Cabana? Should we look at that in a more holistic way? And that's the starting point for this review. But then it seems to sort of run away with itself.
Doesn't it just?
And it doesn't stop there, because then it says, oh, and let's use a lot more non-crime hate incidents reporting.
Yeah.
I mean, the clue's in the name for non-crime hate incidents. It's not a crime. It's just words. It's hurty words.
No, you see, I suspect there may even be non-crimes reported about me for maybe one of my monologues or something I said on GBNews. There might be one of you. How on earth are the police meant to police something that's non-crime?
Yeah.
I think, to me, this is it's just words. They are trying to distract from the issue, which is that in the case of Axel Ruda-Cabana, there was a disjointed approach with all the different services that came into contact with him 3 times that he was brought to prevent. How is this going to make any difference?
I don't think a non-crime hate incident would have stopped him,
but that's,
really.
What I'm saying is all this talk isn't going to make any difference.
No.
We actually have the laws already in place to deal with people, and we use a level of our own common sense. So to me, he is a terrorist in a sense because he terrorised, OK? And so I could put him in the bag of extremist and a terrorist because I see what he did was extreme and it was terrorising.
But also it was violent. And the difference here, and the problem with the very broad scope of this review, and thank goodness it was leaked. If it hadn't been leaked, the government would have taken this hook, line and sinker. I am sure of it. I am sure that if it hadn't been leaked ahead of time, this would be government policy by now. But because it was leaked, we now know that in the basket of extremists, along with the Al-Qaedas of this world and the Axel Ruda-Cabanas of this world, they're putting in people who talk about two-tier policing.
Yeah.
And saying anyone who uses the phrase two-tier policing is an extremist.
And that's far right wing. So they're coming back to that. I think they're kind of using this as a cloak to extend their powers to things like if you say this, you're far right.
It's clamping down on legitimate debate, because I think any reasonable person could look at how the police acted in 2020 and 2021, look at how protests that broke social distancing guidelines were policed when there were Black Lives Matter protests versus when they were anti-COVID restriction protests. Or when they were Black Lives Matter protests versus when they were the vigil for the Sarah Everard horrific case of murder.
It was quite clear.
Very clearly, the police behaved to different groups in different ways. Now, if you say that, which I think is completely evidenced, if you say that and you say that that's two-tier policing, apparently you're an extremist. How is that?
This is just simply, in my view, a way of using this new report to try and encompass other things to take more control. And it's obvious to me, as obvious to the British public, and I don't think they're going to get far with this, and they're already backtracking. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Loads more still to come on today's show.
Yes, a former government scientist has written to Ed Miliband, branding the UK's net zero plans an engineering fantasy, having underestimated the challenges and the costs massively. We'll get to that after the news headlines.
Good afternoon. Your headlines from the GB newsroom. It's 1:31. The UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032. That's up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year from the mid-2028s onwards. Following the release of the figures today, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wants to bring down staggeringly high levels of migration, but will not set arbitrary caps. Meanwhile, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said the government must do more.
Forecasts the ONS put out are completely unacceptable. They don't need to happen and they should not happen. What Kemi Badenoch and I have said is there should be a legally binding annual cap on the number of visas that we issue to get these numbers right down. You know, we have 9 million working age people here in the UK that are not in the workforce. We need to see those people getting to work, and we need to see more investment in technology and mechanisation instead of importing very large numbers of low-skill wages. That is not the right thing to do. We need to see change, and we've got a plan to do that.
Now, police should record more non-crime hate incidents, according to a leaked Home Office report, despite earlier orders to stop over fears of the impact on free speech. The counter-extremism report dismisses claims of two-tier policing as a right-wing extremist narrative. The review, ordered by the Home Secretary, goes on to say that grooming gangs are an alleged problem frequently exploited by the far right. In other news, the driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nuria Sajad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges, but the girl's family said they were unconvinced by the investigation, and in October the force said it would reopen its inquiry. And Donald Trump has called the rise of Chinese company DeepSeek a wake-up call for US tech industries after its artificial intelligence model triggered shockwaves on Wall Street. DeepSeek says its models are comparable with those from US giants like OpenAI, but potentially a fraction of the cost. That has triggered a fall in various US shares, especially chipmaker Nvidia, which registered a record one-day loss for any company on Wall Street. Responding to the news yesterday, the US president said the latest developments in China's AI industry may be a positive for the US.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, also still rather windy across the southwest, and temperatures around about average for the time of year across the country. And the reason for this unsettled weather is all because of this area of low pressure still swirling around the country, dragging in some heavy showers at times. Could be quite a wet day on offer, particularly across parts of Wales, parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, for example. This rain heavy at times, could even see some hail and thunder, particularly across the south. It might be a slightly drier day across parts of northern England, but still across coastal areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, still a fair few showers feeding in here too. As I say, temperatures around about average, if not rather mild across the south, but that being offset by all the heavy rain and the showers. To finish off the day then across Scotland, still plenty of showers moving through, these likely falling as snow across hills and still rather breezy around coastal areas too. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be a little bit drier at times across northern parts of England, but for Wales, central and southern parts of England, still plenty of showers moving through and still once again these turning rather heavy at times and those strong winds still continuing across parts of the southwest. Overnight, however, we'll start to see a gradual ease of the showers becoming more confined to southern counties as we head towards the morning. Still a fair few moving in across Scotland too, but across the central slice of the UK, largely turning drier. Should see a fair few clear spells overnight too, and that means it's likely to be a chillier night on offer as we head into tonight, particularly under those clearer skies away from the cloud. Heading into tomorrow, there should be more dry weather around, maybe even seeing some sunshine by the afternoon. That's away from the far south, though, as we see another area of low pressure just start to drift some rain in through the English Channel, clipping southern counties as we head into the afternoon. Dry elsewhere, though we still can't rule out some showers, particularly around Scotland, still falling as snow across high ground.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In County Down, the A51 remains closed each way along Tandraby Road at Guildford because of a fallen tree. The M180 in Lincolnshire is closed westbound between junctions 4 and 3, and the A15 at Scorby to the M181 at Scunthorpe after a lorry broke down with an oil spill. In Northamptonshire on the A14, there's a lane closed eastbound for emergency bridge repairs just after junction 12 at Islip, causing roughly 2 miles of queues towards Thrapston. Northbound trains through Cheltenham Spa have been stopped because of a faulty train. Gatwick Express services are suspended because of a landslip. There are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Calais because of poor weather conditions, up to half-hour delays between Dover and Dunkirk. And in Devon, the A374 Plymouth roads closed out of Plymouth from Aerobridge Road to the A38 at the Marsh Mills roundabout after an accident causing long delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, activists Just Stop Oil have been booed by a West End audience after they ruined a Shakespeare play by storming the stage.
2 people have been arrested following the disruption and remain in custody.
But let's take a look at this. They're rushing onto stage there.
That's Sigourney Weaver there, sitting there. Is it Sigourney Weaver?
It's Sigourney Weaver's play.
Yeah.
But that was the scene last night.
Yes.
So, is it time that we ban these sort of climate protests for good? Well, delighted to be joined by a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil, Dr. Bin Jones. Dr. Bin, thank you for joining us. Now, of course, for legal reasons, we can't talk about the specifics of the case last night, now that there have been arrests. But moving to the generality of these disruptive protests that Just Stop Oil uses, do you think it does your cause any good?
Well, Tom, it's got me on your programme. I didn't hear you ringing me up yesterday or the day before to come and tell you the truth. Got to put my cards on the table now, right? Your introduction always sets these actions in a kind of a negative way. Look, I'm a doctor. I'm used to dealing with evidence and facts. There's nothing worse than watching somebody dying slowly and unnecessarily because they didn't know until it was too late. The facts are terrifying, and these people going onto that stage are just trying to tell your audience the facts. The Californian wildfires costing billions. We've seen hundreds dead in Spain and 100,000 cars destroyed in one day. And it's caused by burning of fossil fuels. And there's one action which needs to be done. And that's what these people went on that stage to say. There's a single essential action, which is that we've got to stop burning oil, coal and gas by 2030. It's urgent. Tom, Nana, it's urgent.
Listen, Dr. Bing, look, come on. First of all, the Californian wildfires, you can put that narrative on it. The conditions were perfect, but a lot of people say there were arsonists there who kicked off a lot of that. Yes, it was an environment which it was easier to tinderbox environment, but it,
let me finish.
I could have stopped you, and I was prepared to, but I thought I'll let him finish. I'll be polite. So you do the same. So the point is, a lot of these things that you're quoting, the wildfires, OK, if you don't think it was arson, whatever, but we are doing it. The governments are pushing for net zero. Everyone is heading towards this climate emergency that you guys are talking about. What more do you want to happen?
You guys, you have got to grow up. There are things which are happening in the weather all the time. There are things which are happening which have never happened before. Those Californian wildfires were worse than any similar fires in the past. Valencia in Spain, It was the worst ever. There's only one thing that makes a difference.
Residents of Chicago would say that there were worse fires in the 1860s, but can we get to a significant
the thing
point
which
here?
makes it? Can I please finish? The thing which makes a difference between the worst ever, like yesterday, there was wind in Ireland. It was the worst ever. Your audience really does need to know. The thing that makes it different between what happened before and the worst ever is burning oil, coal and gas.
Listen,
the people that went on the stage were there to say, we passed 1.5, the last
OK,
safe...
listen, let's not talk about that. Listen, when did records begin? When did climate records begin? How many years ago?
There have been climate records of different quality since time immemorial.
Since
but
when?
The fact
specifically,
is that we have to,
since when? I'll tell you, it's about 140-something years we've had actual records, 170 years. That's not since time began. That's since we started recording it, where we have official documentation. You weren't here billions of years ago.
No,
so you don't know, Dr. Bing. Listen, I've got to go.
You, but
no, I wasn't. That's why I'm not going to say that it's the worst ever fire ever or the worst wind ever, because I don't know, and neither do you.
But Dr. Bing, we get your point. Your point is that more CO2 in the atmosphere means these destructive events are more likely to happen. Other people might say that, yes, whilst there are more extreme weather events, there's also more economic progress and more ability to deal with those sorts of events, and fewer people died in these sorts of events this year than in previous years, despite the events being worse. But Dr. Bing-Jones, for now, I'm sure we'll have you back. And you know what? We will invite you back.
I want you on my programme. You can talk to me and I'll give you time and I won't interrupt.
And you won't have to disrupt a West End theatre piece, or you won't have to lie in a road or smash a window or do any of that, and we'll invite you on for the reasoned discussion without having to attach it. Without having to attach it to some arson or vandalism or whatever else that people might...
Tom, I will look forward to it.
All right, Dr. Bing, and don't glue your hands to anything as well when you come along. Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to stick with the subject of net zero now, because a former government scientist has written to the Energy Secretary saying that the UK's net zero plans are an engineering fantasy, underestimating all the challenges and the costs.
Now, to recap, Labour want to make the UK a clean energy superpower with the goal of achieving zero-carbon electricity system by 2030.
Well, they claim that doing so will reduce annual household energy bills and cut costs for businesses, those energy costs creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in the clean energy sector. Well,
joining us now, GB News' science and health editor, Lucy Johnston. Lucy, I think it's fantasy. It's going to cost trillions and trillions and trillions of pounds. It's been underestimated. Do we really need to go towards this? How realistic are his plans?
Yeah, well, what's quite important is he's gone into this in quite a lot of depth. He is a professor of technology at Cambridge University. He was a government scientist and he dealt a lot with energy there. So he's looked at this in detail and he's actually revised his figures from when I interviewed him before. He says this will cost 4.4 trillion by 2050, and by 2030 alone, when the government wants to make the grid adapt it to have no use of fossil fuels, that will cost about 100 billion. So by 2050, that will be the equivalent to £100,000 for every single household. And what he says is not only the money we haven't got the manpower. We will need 140,000 extra trained staff. We don't have that. We'll need 10 times the amount. And we haven't got the materials because we don't mine enough of the copper, lithium and all these precious metals that we'll need. So he just says it's doomed to failure.
4.4 trillion is larger than the entire UK economy. The UK economy is about £3 trillion. So 4.4 trillion, I get it, by 2040, but we're going to need to find all of the money in the economy and put it towards this.
2050, yes. It would cleanly wipe out our debt. And I think what he argues is that we have only one pie. We only have one pot of money, and that while the argument is we need to do this for the future, for the children, for future generations, he says that we actually need now money to help with poverty, with help with education, with help with health, all these things that are immediate, and that this will actually...
So does he think that it's impossible, or does he give a pathway to do it at all?
Well, what he argues is that there hasn't been a pathway, that the government has just had a one-way road. He's tried to put this up before. He's written to Ed Miliband. He's seen members of the Department of Energy and Security, Net Zero, but it seems to have fallen on deaf ears, and he doesn't get into the climate debate, and that is one area where scientists are wary to go because they get criticised by being called climate deniers, like COVID. People got criticised, so he just says it's not possible, and challenge my figures if you want.
Oh, goodness. Well, Lucy Johnson, thank you very much. Ed Miliband needs to stop playing that ukulele and needs to start listening to what people are saying. But stay with us. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. An independent school in Dudley is on a mission to expand its traditional curriculum to more pupils. Stay tuned to find out how.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, you know I like an auction.
Yes,
and I've bought some strange things at auction before you have as well, haven't you, Eamon?
Yeah, well, Ellie would throw this in the bin that you're coming up with now.
How about this? Admiral Lord Nelson's hair.
Nice.
Cut. I mean, is this a bit spooky? Cut as he lay dying during the Battle of Trafalgar, so someone's gone, oh, we'll just have a little bit of that there. In 1805, is on sale in Jersey, and it's a little cup. How much would you pay for the hair?
No, nothing. It would go in the bin, straight in the bin.
What, even? What? Nelson? That's very disrespectful to the British culture and heritage.
I think it's disrespectful that he lay there dying and someone thought, we'll take a quick strip
maybe they just had, maybe they thought, you know, because there's obviously the famous painting, isn't there, of the Battle of Trafalgar. Maybe they thought, we'll give him a quick haircut, and then they kept their £15,000. 15 grand.
Where's the hair come from? What part of the body?
His head, Eamon.
Well, it could be his underarm. I don't know. You know, it depends.
Let me have a little look.
You would bid more.
Very curly. I think it's his head. It's his head. What?
You would bid more for his head than, say, his underarm.
Well, I think so, yeah, I would hope so, yeah.
Or anywhere else.
I would hope so. A little less whiffy there, the head hair. And there it is. And it's in a little pot.
No.
And the only way you can probably find out is if you DNA test it, I guess. It's definitely his.
Whoever pays for that is bonkers.
Well,
that's creepy.
I was seriously tempted to make a bid for a toupee, not for me, but as worn by John Wayne.
John Wayne's wig?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why?
Well, why I didn't get it was my wife said to me, that is not coming into the house.
Well, she's right. She's right.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 to 2. Now, an independent school in Dudley is on a mission to expand its traditional curriculum to more pupils.
The King Alfred School in the Black Country promises, although they'll probably be complaining about that word soon, promises to deliver a private school education, but at a third of the cost to parents. GB News' West Midlands reporter Jack Carson has the story.
In Dudley, a revival in Christian education is growing in strength.
Started in 2018, the King Alfred School is the UK's first classical Christian school with the aim of providing students with a different kind of start in life, an education centred around celebrating history, philosophy and Christ, as co-founder Thomas Bowen explains.
We decided that it would be a good start to look at the people who built Western civilization rather than those who seem to be busy trying to tear it apart. We teach them how to think rather than what to think, public speaking and persuasive writing. So you've got children who have a body of knowledge to draw on, can think for themselves and then can articulate their beliefs at the end of it.
Traditional teaching methods largely abandoned by the state have been reinstated in the classroom.
Magna Carta was sealed on the 15th of June 1215 in Runnymede.
By who?
King John.
For teacher Timothy Faulkner, the way education was delivered at his former school made him fall out of love with his job.
It was very much a destructive way of teaching about these particular subjects. There was a particular agenda. This school is the only place that I was happy to return to teaching.
In Labour's first budget, Rachel Reeves confirmed the delivery of a manifesto commitment which the government say will help ensure every child has the best life chances.
94% of children in the UK attend state schools. To provide the highest quality of support and teaching that they deserve, we will introduce VAT on private school fees from January 2025.
Reports in December suggested the Department for Education aims to create a curriculum which reflects the diversities of our society. Hayley Bowen is the head teacher at King Alfred's.
We've had 8 families leave this academic year, 8 children leave, so that has been quite impactful. This school is set up to make a private education affordable, so all it is doing is pricing hard-working families out of having a good education. Instead of raising the bar, we're actually involved in a race to the bottom.
The school says it's at capacity and demand means they need to move to a new site. But expanding is coming at a cost, with tens of thousands of pounds still needed in donations.
We've raised £56,000 so far, and we need at least another 200 to raise the deposit and the refurbishment costs in order for us to have a school that, instead of catering just for a few pupils, we can cater then for over 200.
While state education undergoes reform, this school says it wants to celebrate the best of Britain when teaching the next generation. Jack Carson, GB News, Dudley.
Well, this is a fascinating story, isn't it? Let's speak to the co-founder and director of the King Alfred School, Hayley Bowen, who we saw in that video there. Hayley, thanks so much for joining us. Firstly, what is it that is so different about the King Alfred School to other schools?
I think because the King Alfred School is going back to classical roots of education, we are focusing and majoring on all the things education used to focus on, which was the cultivation of wisdom and virtue, and these are kind of words we don't hear so often anymore. So we focus on the best that has been thought, said and done down the ages to equip children to live really good, meaningful lives. So we study the best that has been thought, said and done, and the great heroes that have helped build our society. So we believe here as a school that a classical education is the answer to our cultural decline as a nation.
And so it's a private school, as I understand it. So will the VAT raid affect you? And if so, how bad will it be?
Yes, the VAT is very impactful because we offer our school at a third of the price of the average private school. So our school fees are £6,000, so that is very low, and the government gets at least £7,500 per child per year in the state. Right. So we operate on less than the state does each year, and now we're going to have to pass that expense on to the parents. So it's really impactful because people don't often realise that it's not the case that private schools are rich. we actually just spend our money well, and it's pricing a lot of people out of a really high quality education. People have worked very hard, and maybe one income families, to try and help their children get a step up. And, you know, especially where we are, an industrial area, the Black Country, it's not a well-off area. We're a working class area, and people are maybe from one income households who send their children to this school, and it's really hitting them very hard.
Yeah, and we heard in that report 8 children already have had to leave the school. And these will be the people who are scrimping and saving and finding that £6,000 to send the children to your school. It's going to affect those who are just on that line as to whether they can or can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And this school was built by parents and teachers just trying their best for the next generation. And it's so impactful, because we believe it's the responsibility of the citizens of a country to help educate their children. We don't just wait for what the government gives us. We think any responsible citizen and parent should be actively involved in their children's education. So it's really it's really damaging. But we're very positive. The school is outgrowing where we are, and we now have.
Hayley Bang, we're running out of time. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. She's the co-founder and director of the King Alfred School.
And best of luck with that donation drive too. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Don't go anywhere. We're looking at this population boom. 5 million more.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 28th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Acquia.
Shocking new data from the ONS reveals the UK's population is set to rise to 72.5 million by 2032, driven almost entirely by net migration. That's 5 million more people in the next 10 years.
Two-tier policing claims dismissed as right-wing and plans to revive widespread deployment of non-crime hate incidents. We'll have all the details from a leaked Home Office review.
And the government plans to delay defence spending until at least 2025. When will defence spending rise to the promise? And will this put Britain's safety at risk?
And why are we seeing a decline in traditional British pie and mash shops in the capital? Have you been to a pie and mash shop recently?
Do you know what? I don't think I've ever been to
have.
a pie. Maybe I'm the problem.
You're the problem.
I think I'm the problem.
It's definitely him, isn't it? It's not me.
Yeah.
I've been to a pie and mash shop. When I used to live in Greenwich, there was one near the Cutty Sark. There was a pie and mash shop opposite the Cutty Sark. All the traditional stuff. You got that little pub, the Gypsy Moth. I wonder if it's still there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got a nice pie and mash.
But we're going to be live in East London a little bit later in the programme because, I mean, the demographics of East London have changed considerably. It's no longer a sort of Cockney pie and mash area, and maybe that is a sort of the decline of pie and mash shops speak to a changing demographic within London.
Maybe it's people who've got a bit concerned with the processed nature of the pies and the mash, because you know what people are like these days. If you've got it with oat milk, or if you've got it with this, or you've got it with this, the pie and mash shop just thought, you know what, I'm done with this.
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced Tower Hamlets will be the borough of London that is the most concerned about oat milk.
Oh, I don't know, you know. This,
no?
No. All I'm saying is I think the tastes of people has genuinely changed. That's the point I'm making.
Well, we will be live outside, sadly, a closed pie and mash shop a little bit later. But also, of course, looking to this breaking news today, the Office for National Statistics expects 5 million more people coming into the country over the next 10 years. What do you make of it? gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved in that and all of our discussions. All to come after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. The UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032. That's up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year. That's from mid-2028 onwards. Following the release of the figures today, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wants to bring down staggeringly high levels of migration, but will not set arbitrary caps. Meanwhile, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said the government must do more.
Forecasts the ONS put out are completely unacceptable. They don't need to happen and they should not happen. What Kemi Badenoch and I have said is there should be a legally binding annual cap on the number of visas that we issue to get these numbers right down. You know, we have 9 million working age people here in the UK that are not in the workforce. We need to see those people getting to work, and we need to see more investment in technology and mechanisation instead of importing very large numbers of low-skill wages. That is not the right thing to do. We need to see change, and we've got a plan to do that.
Police should record more non-crime hate incidents, according to a leaked Home Office report, despite earlier orders to stop over fears of the impact on free speech. The counter-extremism report dismisses claims of two-tier policing as a right-wing extremist narrative. The review, ordered by the Home Secretary, goes on to say that grooming gangs are an alleged problem frequently exploited by the far right. Meanwhile, Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith told GB News the report's conclusion is disturbing.
The Home Secretary needs to publish this immediately so that we can all see for ourselves what and who it is that's saying these non-crime hate incidents, these attack and waste of police resources, something a Conservative Home Secretary stopped. And there's clearly a cell within the Home Office that is not concerned about ordinary crime, ordinary policing, in favour of this ideological approach to non-crime hate incidents. They're wrong. That's not where we should be putting our police resources. And the Home Secretary needs to come to Parliament today, publish this report and explain who it is that keeps coming up with this idea.
So Keir Starmer has responded, saying when it comes to extremism, it's important to focus resources on the threats faced by the UK.
I think when it comes to extremism, it's very important that we are focused on the threat so we can deploy our resource properly, and therefore we're looking carefully at where the key challenges are. Obviously that's now informed with what I said last week in the aftermath of the Southport murders, where we've got the additional challenge, I think, of a sort of cohort of loners who are extreme, and they need to be factored in. So that's the focus. In the end, what this comes down to is safety and security of people across the United Kingdom, and that's my number one focus.
In other news, the driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nouria Sajjad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges. But the girls' families said they were unconvinced the investigation had been carried out thoroughly, and in October, the force said it would reopen its inquiry. And 2 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil supporters disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest, starring Sigourney Weaver. The protest unfolded at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, last night, when 2 activists entered the stage with an orange banner reading "Over 1.5 degrees is a global shipwreck." This was a reference to the recent announcement that 2024 had been the warmest on record globally and the first full year when the average temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The Met Police said a 42-year-old woman and a 6-year-old man are being held in custody on suspicion of aggravated trespass. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Nana.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 7 minutes past 2. Now, the UK's population is set to rise to 72.5 million by mid-2032.
The projection released by the ONS, or the Office of National Statistics, is driven almost entirely by net migration, with a 5 million increase in the next 10 years.
Well, we're joined now by the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Chris, what's your response to these numbers? And frankly, what are you telling the government today?
Well, good afternoon, Tom and Nana. I think these forecasts are totally unacceptable. This does not need to happen. It should not be allowed to happen. And what I'm saying to the government today is they need to urgently introduce a legally binding cap on the number of visas that get given out. Now, these forecasts forecast there's going to be 10 million people coming into the country, immigrants, over 10 years, 5 million leaving, giving net migration of 5 million. That's completely unacceptable. We should not be giving out 1 million visas a year. There needs to be that's a choice. We can stop that straight away with a hard, legally binding cap. Now, some people say, oh, we need people to work in the economy. What we should be doing is, first of all, only letting people in who have high levels of skill in areas where there are genuine shortages, people who are going to command high wages, in the IT sector, the banking sector, the science sector, those kind of sectors. We should not be importing very large numbers of people with very low skills on low wages. That is completely wrong. What instead we should do is look to the 9 million working age adults we've got here in the UK who are economically inactive and get a fair chunk of those into work. We also need to invest more money as a country in technology and mechanisation so we don't need so many people. Countries like Holland have mechanised a lot of agricultural fruit and vegetable picking, for example. In South Korea, in manufacturing, They've got 9 times the density of robotic automation in their factories compared to the UK. So it's partly about getting UK people into work, the 9 million of them, and more mechanisation and technology. What we don't need and cannot have in the future is mass low-skilled immigration, because it actually ends up costing the taxpayer money. It's fiscally negative. They consume more in public services than they pay in tax. It puts obviously pressure on infrastructure, things like housing, transport and the NHS, and it can also undermine social cohesion when you get very large-scale immigration that doesn't integrate. So that is my message to government. That is our plan for a different approach, and I hope the government listens. And by the way, if I get an opportunity to put down amendments to legislation to do what I just described, I will certainly be taking those opportunities in Parliament.
All right, so kind of sort of basically don't do what the Conservatives did, because kind of everything you described is sort of what you did. Kemi Badenoch admitted that actually you guys got it wrong. That's fair enough. Why do you think the Labour government don't want a cap or to put any caps or numbers on anything?
Yeah, so firstly, you're right to say mistakes were made in the past, and that is why, under new leadership, we are going to take a very different approach. We've been honest and upfront about that. So you asked the second question about why Starmer won't put a cap on migration. Honestly, I don't know why not. Maybe he just likes immigration. Maybe he's under the misguided impression that somehow it helps economic growth. In fact,
Chris, to be fair,
people coming here,
Rishi Sunak never put a cap on migration. Liz Truss never put a cap on migration. Boris Johnson never put a cap on migration. Theresa May never put a cap on migration as Prime Minister. Could there be something deeper here going on? I mean, clearly, the Prime Ministers of your party of the last 14 years have had all sorts of considerations to look at. They might be listening to the Treasury from one ear. They might be listening to the Office for Budget Responsibility with another ear. I mean, is what you're saying fiscally responsible, given we know what happens when the OBR says there's going to be less money coming into the country? Is that potentially one of the things that the government's looking at here?
Yeah, so two points, Tom. Firstly, yes, those decisions you mentioned by previous Prime Ministers not to have a cap, yes, that was a mistake. They got that wrong. Interestingly, if you go back to the Cameron time in government, he did have a cap.
Only for non-EU migration.
As Home Secretary. So exactly. So they had a cap. You're right. They had a cap on non-EU migration, about 20,000 a year, and that worked. That really did work. Now, obviously, the EU migration didn't have a cap, but people came here from Poland and those kind of places and did end up working quite hard. But the non-EU migration during those years, 2010 to 2016, was capped at 20,000 a year. That did work, and that shows a cap can work. Now, your second question was about the OBR. Now, you're right. Historically, the OBR has had this, and the Treasury have had this obsession with net migration, and they've just said high net migration leads to more economic growth. And I think there's now a recognition that is mistaken analysis for two reasons. Firstly, it makes no account of per capita GDP. And of course, what you and I and your viewers feel in our pockets isn't the total size of the economy, it's income per person. And actually having a lot of people coming in who either don't work at all or work on the minimum wage actually reduces income per person. So it's actually a bad thing from the point of view of any individual citizen. I think the second thing that finally the OBR might have admitted to in the last 6 months is they've actually acknowledged that there are very different kinds of immigration that have different impacts. Look, if someone comes in to work as a research scientist in the City of London in finance, in the tech sector, in the media sector, very often they'll be making good money, they'll be really making a big contribution, and that is good for the economy, whatever measure you use. But if people come in and either don't work at all because they're on a dependence visa, or if they come in and work on a minimum wage job, that is actually bad for the economy because it reduces productivity, it reduces per capita income. It actually also, just as bad, actually costs the exchequer, costs the taxpayer money, because people on the minimum wage end up consuming more in services than they pay in tax. Now, until about 6 months ago, the OBR didn't even acknowledge or admit that was the case. They are now finally, in the last 6 months, admitting that.
Finally,
and that completely changes the debate. Finally.
Chris, can I just briefly ask you
really, isn't it?
About illegal migration and the small boats which keep crossing, which, although now it's a small figure, if we carry on the way we are, it's going to be quite a big figure when we get to 2032. So what would you be advising the Labour government to do about it? So far, we've heard smashing the gangs, and apparently they've sent more people back than ever before. But what would you be? What is your suggestions on that? How would the Conservatives deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, so this smashing the gangs thing is like ridiculous. I mean, obviously the previous government were doing that. It's really hard to do, and if you get rid of one gang, another one pops up in its place. So you're not going to end this by smashing the gangs. The numbers have gone up a lot since the election. They've gone up by about 30% compared to the same period last year. And I think I'm right in saying January is on course to be the worst month ever, the worst January ever in history. These return numbers, by the way, are bogus. Almost, when they say they've returned more people, they're mostly returning people to like Eastern Europe and those kind of places, people who've committed criminal offences, which is fine, but almost none of those people being returned came into the country on small boats. In fact, of the people they're returning, they're asking to or getting to leave the country, fewer than 5% actually entered on small boats. So that's a nonsense argument that government are trying to use. What should they be doing? It's very simple. There's two things. First of all, if when these boats embark from the French coast, the French would stop them in French waters near the shore and take them back, as the Belgians are doing, that would stop it. They should, we're giving them lots of money, they should ask the French to do that. But the thing that is in our hands is a deterrent, right? If people arrive here and they are illegally, by small boat, these are illegal immigrants, leaving a safe country, France, nobody needs to flee war in France. The minute their feet touch the land, if they immediately got sent somewhere else, like Rwanda, or frankly anywhere else, then very quickly, within a matter of a few weeks, people would stop attempting the crossing, because why would you leave France to come to the UK?
That would be the gamble. It would be a large upfront cost.
That worked in Australia. It worked in Australia. It can work here.
Well, Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it, live from the House of Commons there.
Right. Now, moving on, Labour's pledge to increase defence spending could be delayed until at least 2030.
Well, Whitehall sources told the Daily Mail newspaper that the Treasury could delay meeting the pledge to raise defence spending to 2.5% until, well, after the next election.
And all of this comes as the government defends its decision to change the name of one of the Royal Navy subs from HMS... how do I say that? Agincourt to HMS Achilles, a weak ankle.
Yeah, well, who better to speak to than the former Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon? Because, Sir Michael, I understand you were the Defence Secretary who decided to call this submarine HMS Agincourt in the first place. But apparently now the French aren't particularly happy with it.
Well, nobody complained at the time. Nobody from France made any objection to that name. This is 7 or 8 years ago, so I'm very puzzled. I mean, what a nonsense to suddenly start changing it now. Agincourt, by the way, was 600 years ago. You'd think they'd have got over it. And if you go to France, if you go to Paris, the city is littered with the names of great French victories. I'm really, I'm astounded that we should suddenly feel embarrassed about something that happened 600 years ago.
But to rename it Achilles, obviously that's a part of the body that is a weak spot. So to call something that's supposed to be regal and strong and that Achilles, it's like the Achilles heel. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
And again, Achilles was the Greek hero against the Trojans. The Trojans are the current day Turks. So, why aren't you sensitive about what Ankara and the Turkish government will say about that? What a nonsense, really. The name was recommended by the Navy, came up to the Secretary of State. Successive Secretary of States have confirmed it after my time. And suddenly there's this kind of weasel sensitivity. Oh, the French might be upset. Well, they weren't upset.
It's fascinating to see that there hadn't actually been a complaint from the French. I mean, I've noticed that the French have had ships in the past called Jeanne d'Arc, which you think that the British might have been, or at least the English might have been upset with. Or the bridge in Paris that's named after Austerlitz. And I don't think the Prussians have ever...
Tom, you can't deny history. Of course, there have been battles in the past between Britain and France. Now we're allies. We fought together in the two world wars. We're allies together in NATO. We're great friends. No French admiral or French minister ever complained to me.
But of course, this all comes in the context of defence spending. And the government entered the last election saying that it would increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. We live in a turbulent world, and frankly, whatever name we give to our submarines, they need to, well, be fuelled, they need to have the missiles, they need to have the kit, the tech, and that all costs money. What do you make of this seeming delay to the increase of defence spending? Is that going to put us at risk?
Of course it is, yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, it was a commitment in Labour's manifesto, it was a commitment in all parties' manifesto to get this up to 2.5%. If you go back to the turn of this century, Tom, a long way to look back, but 25 years ago, in a much more peaceful world, we were spending 2.7%. That was long before Russia invaded the Crimea, long before Islamist aggression or before Iran started threatening us with missiles. So we've had higher spending before, and now the threats have multiplied again, not just from Russia in Ukraine. We've had attacks on British shipping out in the Red Sea. Yeah. We have Islamist terror reviving again in the Middle East. And we have these threats. We have North Korean troops fighting on our own continent against Ukraine. So the threats have grown worse, and therefore we need to increase our spending again. Now, Labour pledged to do that, but it's meaningless unless you actually put a timetable on it, unless you give us a date. Now, last time we all said we would spend at least 2%. I got our spending up to 2%. That was the NATO commitment. So Labour really need now to follow through their commitment to 2.5% and to put a date on it.
Well, you know, Keir Starmer refused to say when, didn't he? Just said that he would at some point. Thank you very much, the former Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon. Really good to talk to you there. Interesting that we do need to spend more on defence. It is quite obvious. But I think Donald Trump will put pressure on Keir Starmer and use the same tactics that he's used with countries to receive their migrants, like offering us a lower tariff on exports and imports if, of course, we do certain things. And it might be that he might push us to spend more on defence.
It'll be an interesting one to watch. I wonder if this renaming of Agincourt, you know, pretending that Henry V never defeated the French, if we sort of whitewash, is this because the Labour government want to get a bit closer to the French? Want to have a bit of a closer trading relationship, political relationship, and think that a submarine named after our most heroic sort of 2-1 or 3-1 or 4-1, if you read some accounts of history, sort of victory against the French, our archers against their, you know, thousands, tens of thousands
I think you're giving them way too much credit. It's a load of civil servants who didn't have anything to do and thought, oh, we'll just rename a ship, and they don't really understand the full historical context. I think that's right.
Right, we're going to zoom out now because time is running out on your chance to become our biggest ever giveaway winner. An incredible £50,000 straight to your bank account. Totally cash-free. Cash-free cash for tax-free cash for you to spend however you like. Make sure you don't miss out.
There's just 3 days left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
It's such a nice feeling.
Just go for it.
It's one text, and if I can win, anyone can win.
I was on cloud nine.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come.
Why are we seeing a decline in the traditional British bar and mash shop in the capital? That's next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs. You know, remember they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin. And the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead, because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now, do you love a pie and mash? Well, London's pie and mash shops are becoming, as rare as Cockney rhyming slang.
The Pie and Mash Club, it's a society for the cuisine's enthusiasts, have found that there are now fewer than 40 in London, down from nearly 300 in the mid-19th century. This is apparently due to rising rents and changing tastes.
Well, joining us now from one of the few pie shops that remains is GB News reporter Adam Cherry, our very own pie correspondent.
Yeah.
Take it away, Adam.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Your pie correspondent delivers some good news. He has joined the Pie, Mash and Liquor Appreciation Society. I'm here in M. Manzies, which is now the oldest surviving pie and eel shop in London. It's been open since 1892, and as you said in the intro there, it's really sort of a dying breed. One of the sister sites of this shop, the distant relative, own one of their own other shops in Deptford, and that closed on Saturday for the very last time. They've been open for over 100 years. So you clearly see that there's a declining, not necessarily a declining interest, that's the wrong way of putting it, but it's nowhere near as prevalent as it used to be. This was a staple of the East End, and it's now gone from about 300 shops in the Victorian times to under 40 now, and it's declining further and further. Now, also, a couple of months ago, I was in Basildon talking about a similar story with Richard Holden, trying to create a protected status for pie and mash to prevent sort of copycats from stealing the recipe and making it less authentic. So that is ongoing. There's clearly interest in it, and tourists enjoy coming in here. Hopefully I'll get one of my own pies shortly and have another taste. But it would be a shame to see this go. It's not just about the pie and the taste and the flavour, which is fantastic. It's also about history and community. A lot of people come in here as regulars, so we're just shining a light on a crucial part of London's historic economy. It's a bit of good fun, and it certainly tastes very good as well.
Adam, today I heard you mention eel. That was what put me off the final time when I had an eel pie. I thought, oh my God, that thing feels like it's still moving in it. But I'm just wondering, do they do gluten-free pies and things like that? Because that's why I think these things are disappearing, because we've all gone a bit up our own, you know, asking
up our own what, Nana?
Nothing. But you know what I mean? Do they do gluten-free?
I don't. Do you know what? I'll chat to the team here and ask if they do gluten-free options. And if they do, the good news is, Nana, that they do delivery. So I can put an order in for you now, and by the time you're finished up, we can have some meal at your door instantly, and we can do a live taste test. But I'll check on that. I mean, the more serious point is, of course, it is now competing with the likes of chains, you know, the Greggs just up the road, bakeries, and other restaurants that offer similar sort of food at similar sort of prices. And Gen Z, my generation, are quite interested in being health conscious. I think the most popular meal deal item is now an egg. A boiled egg, a protein egg.
But Adam,
so obviously, tastes are changing slightly.
Is the elephant in the room here, really, that where we used to see lots and lots of, well, sort of pie and mash shops in East London, you're more likely to now see a kebab shop, and it's...
Or Greenwich, South East London as well, has got quite a few pie and mash, like the one in Deptford.
The traditional Cockney side of East London is no longer really the white working class anymore, and tastes have changed as the demographics have changed.
Demographics have changed, yeah, and actually a lot of the ownership, the people who would run these shops traditionally over the last few decades are moving out towards the west, they're moving towards Kent, they're moving towards Sussex, so there are demographic changes, and no doubt that is influencing it as well. And as I say, it's important to do stories like this just to remind people of London's history and why it's important to support these local businesses, particularly against chains as well.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And thank you very much, Adam Cherry. You enjoy that. If you are ordering me a pie there, gluten-free eel pie. Sounds nasty, doesn't it?
Sounds like just complete just gelatinous gloop. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. I hope your lunch has stayed within your stomach as we were talking about eels and gelatin, but much more coming up on today's programme.
Well, stay tuned to find out where Amazon has chosen it as the first location in the UK to see its parcels delivered by drones. That is after the news.
Good afternoon. Your headlines at 2:32. The UK population is set to grow by nearly 5 million in the next decade, and it's almost entirely down to net migration. ONS figures project Britain's population could reach 72.5 million by mid-2032. That's up from the latest estimate of 67.6 million. The data assumes a level of long-term net international migration of 340,000 a year from mid-2028. Following the release of the figures today, Downing Street said the Prime Minister wants to bring down staggeringly high levels of migration, but will not set arbitrary caps. Meanwhile, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said the government must do more.
Forecasts the ONS put out are completely unacceptable. They don't need to happen, and they should not happen. What Kemi Badenoch and I have said is there should be a legally binding annual cap on the number of visas that we issue to get these numbers right down. You know, we have 9 million working age people here in the UK that are not in the workforce. We need to see those people getting to work, and we need to see more investment in technology and mechanisation instead of importing very large numbers of low-skill wages. That is not the right thing to do. We need to see change, and we've got a plan to do that.
Some breaking news now. An inquest jury has concluded that a helicopter crash in which 5 people were killed at Leicester City's King Power Stadium was an accident. Fox's chairman, 2 fellow passengers, the pilot and his partner all died in the crash on the 27th of October 2018. Jurors found the helicopter had all its appropriate airworthiness and maintenance certificates, adding that the pilot had taken all the appropriate actions available to him to try to regain control of the helicopter. In other news, the driver of a 4x4 which crashed into a school in Wimbledon, killing 2 children, has been rearrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. 48-year-old Claire Fremantle previously expressed her deepest sorrow and said she had no recollection of what took place after the deaths of Nuria Sajjad and Selina Lau in Wimbledon on the 6th of July 2023. The Met Police initially said the driver had suffered an epileptic seizure and would face no criminal charges, but the girls' families said they were unconvinced by the investigation, and in October the force said it would reopen its inquiry. And Wyn Evans is set to be axed from the Strictly Come Dancing live tour following his crude remarks to Jeanette Manrara. That's according to reports in the Sun newspaper. It follows his apology after being caught on camera joking about having a threesome with the professional dancer during the tour launch event on the 16th of January. It's understood BBC Studios will be releasing a statement later today. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Sam Francis will have more for you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, also still rather windy across the southwest, and temperatures around about average for the time of year across the country. And the reason for this unsettled weather is all because of this area of low pressure still swirling around the country, dragging in some heavy showers at times. Could be quite a wet day on offer, particularly across parts of Wales, parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, for example. This rain heavy at times, could even see some hail and thunder, particularly across the south. It might be a slightly drier day across parts of northern England, but still across coastal areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, still a fair few showers feeding in here too. As I say, temperatures around about average, if not rather mild across the south, but that being offset by all the heavy rain and the showers. To finish off the day then across Scotland, still plenty of showers moving through, these likely falling as snow across hills and still rather breezy around coastal areas too. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be a little bit drier at times across northern parts of England, but for Wales, central and southern parts of England, still plenty of showers moving through and still once again these turning rather heavy at times and those strong winds still continuing across parts of the southwest. Overnight, however, we'll start to see a gradual ease of the showers, becoming more confined to southern counties as we head towards the morning. Still a fair few moving in across Scotland too, but across the central slice of the UK, largely turning drier. Should see a fair few clear spells overnight too, and that means it's likely to be a chillier night on offer as we head into tonight, particularly under those clearer skies away from the cloud. Heading into tomorrow, there should be more dry weather around, maybe even seeing some sunshine by the afternoon. That's away from the far south though, as we see another area of low pressure just start to drift some rain in through the English Channel, clipping southern counties as we head into the afternoon. Dry elsewhere, though we still can't rule out some showers, particularly around Scotland, still falling as snow across high ground.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In County Down, the A51 remains closed each way along Llandragry Road at Guildford because of a fallen tree. The M180 in Lincolnshire is closed westbound from Junction 4, the A15 Scorby turn, to Junction 3 for the M181 at Scunthorpe after a lorry broke down with an oil spill. In Northamptonshire on the A14, there's a lane closed eastbound for emergency bridge repairs just after Junction 12 at Islip, causing 2 miles of queues towards Thrapston. The M11 in Cambridgeshire, there's a lane closed northbound where there's a shed load between Junctions 11 and 12 near Cambridge, causing roughly 3 miles of queues. Gatwick Express train services are suspended because of a landslip. There are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Calais because of poor weather conditions. And in Devon, the A374 is closed northbound out of Plymouth from Narrow Bridge Road to the A38 at the Marsh Mills roundabout after an accident causing long delays towards there.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes after 2 o'clock. Sorry, this is GB News. Sorry, the numbers and everything is all... well, it's usually because I'm doing my show between those.
Yeah.
But listen, Amazon has chosen Darlington as the first location in the UK to see its parcels delivered by drones.
Yeah, it's very exciting. The online giant says it will now start the planning process for the initial flights from its fulfilment centre on the outskirts of that town.
Now, whilst they previously promised it would start a drone delivery service by the end of 2023, 2024, the Civil Aviation Authority is still to come up with rules on how commercial drones can be used safely for deliveries.
Well, in some areas in America, this is already happening, where you can just order a parcel from Amazon and they'll drop it in your garden. And seemingly, Darlington in the UK is going to get this first.
I don't know about that. You see, I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable if I'd think I was in some sort of movie where this thing would come and I'd be like, ah! I'd probably run into my house if I saw the drone. And
But you know, it's because literally everyone works from home now, at least on some occasions. Most people work from home. I work Monday to Friday in this studio, and I've been amazed by the number of delivery companies and everything else that will only deliver 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And I'm sorry, what if you have a job that requires you to not be at home?
Well,
what are we supposed to do?
I think Amazon, some of them deliver up till 10 o'clock. So some of them do deliver
But a lot of Amazon deliveries, you can't choose what time of day it will come. And so I've done the fingers crossed, I hope they'll deliver it when I'm at home, and then it doesn't, and I have to go to a post office.
You can have a safe place, Tom. They have a safe place where you can have something delivered.
I would much rather a drone dropped it in my garden. That would solve all my problems.
Yeah, but if it drops it in your garden, then there'll now be a new industry of people who are waiting for drone deliveries and then just nick the parcel. Because if everyone's having things dropped by drones, the drone's not going to knock on the door. Not unless it's got a little drone.
You'd have to have a pretty secure garden or a patio.
Yeah, but
but
the reality is that most people don't have gardens. A lot of people don't maybe have paths. A lot of the houses actually are on the pavement. So I don't know how this drone thing is going to work.
I wonder if
there's going to be a certain criteria. Will it knock on your door? Will you be
there are
informed
lots
by
of obviously this won't work for a lot of flats. It will work for some flats that have balconies. It would be cool to have a drone deliver something to a balcony. But I reckon Darlington probably has a higher than average number of houses with gardens in. Maybe this is one of the reasons why they've chosen Darlington to start this as an option.
It's a bit like the Daleks. They couldn't climb up the steps, so they were a bit pointless, weren't they? Look, I think it's a great idea that we're trying to automate and use other forms so that we can relieve people of certain jobs that may be a bit boring and, you know...
Or just have faster and more reliable deliveries.
But I think there are too many variables where this can be totally unrealistic. Because there are too many different types of properties. There's too many people who are available who could just nick your package.
Well, here's a delivery drone. You can see it on the screen here. And it's sort of...
I can see clouds.
Yeah, it's sort of in the middle there. It's very hard to spot. Is it going to come down? Oh, there is it?
Or is that its camera?
Is it descending?
Is that
this is
shot from
This is a very strange video. It seems to just be completely still floating in the air.
It might be the shot from the drone itself, looking at the sky as it's fallen down.
Do we have any other videos we can show of a drone delivering? Because this is it's an interesting proposal, because we'd like to see it drop a parcel. There it comes. That's quite a harsh
What if you've got
drop.
something that's delicate?
Yeah, you wouldn't want glassware delivered there.
This is what I mean.
They need to work on some of this stuff.
Too many variables. It might be a delicate parcel. The drone doesn't know what's in it. Just going to go, drop that. I'm off. Smash.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
broken.
that would be. Yeah, I mean, that does seem like it probably needs some work there. But this is why pilots and trials are necessary, right? We'll work what works and what doesn't work.
This is why humans are necessary. This is why humans are necessary. Because that ain't going to cut it for me. I'm not having any drone coming up and dropping my stuff that I've ordered.
No, I'm firmly in the pro-drone camp in some situations, but it's going to be more than drones delivering things.
It's complex.
I mean, have you seen the company Waymo?
No.
In San Francisco, they are a taxi company without any taxi drivers. You get in the taxi, and I'm sure there are lots of videos of this online. You get in the taxi, and it just drives you off.
Is it a bit like in Total Recall? Don't know whether you've ever seen that. You're probably too young for it. It's probably older than him. But it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger...
I know a fun fact about Total Recall.
Oh, you do? Go on.
Because when Arnold Schwarzenegger was running to be governor of California, it was when the film Total Recall was doing its big advertising push around the world. And when Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor of California for the first time, it's because they recalled the previous governor. And what really helped the recall campaign was that the film Total Recall was being advertised at the time they were trying to recall the Democratic governor and get Arnie in.
Good. That's one of my favourite films, I must admit. It's a fantastic film.
And there are driverless cars in it,
Yeah, there are driverless cars, and they're like these taxis that go and their heads go like that, then they go...
Well, that's real life now in California. And no doubt it will come to Britain's roads soon.
Well, Total Recall was on Mars, so maybe we'll be living on there soon if we destroy...
If Elon Musk gets his way.
Yeah, well, I know who I'd send up first.
Oh?
I think the front bench of the Labour government.
Well, there we go. But if you're in search of some Martian or indeed winter sun, perhaps you don't have to go as far as other planets in the solar system. Let's have a look at the forecast for some European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Another weather system pushing into parts of Western Europe will bring some further heavy rain and strong winds as we go through tomorrow across parts of Western France, much of Spain and Portugal. It is looking wet and there will be some hill snow around too. Also some wet weather affecting southern Italy, feeding into Greece as well. That being said, as we go through later this week, most places will see something a bit drier and also some decent warmth at times too. So not a total washout of a week. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain at 45 minutes past 2, and there's plenty more coming on today's show.
Toy boys rejoice. A scientific study has confirmed that women really are drawn to a younger man. I wonder why. Our Scotland reporter Tony McGuire is being swamped in Glasgow city centre. That is next.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Aaron McLean, the goal machine here, used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rub it in. These sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer two alternatives, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
That's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because you go from, like, playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, that adulation, the buzz of winning games, and, you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down there.
It's a huge come down.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 49 minutes after 2 o'clock. From Joan Collins to Priyanka Chopra, so many of the most famous women in Hollywood are known for dating younger men.
But they're not alone in liking younger men. Well, a scientific study has confirmed that women really are drawn to younger men, whether they realise it or not.
Well, joining us now is GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who's been speaking to some women about what they prefer. Tony, what have people been saying? Crikey.
Good afternoon, and can I just say thank you for, making me the face of going out there on the streets and talking up the older, let's just say the older end of the dating pool today. That's, I've made quite a lot of friends along the way, it has to be said, but, we'll maybe table that conversation for later, you two, okay? Now, earlier this month, if you remember up in Scotland, we covered that story of the lynxes, getting released illegally. Well, today in Glasgow, I was on the prowl for a different type of big cat, and that is because the University of California they have done a study that says that women are actually, whether they know it or not, have just as much of an appetite for younger men as older men do for younger women. And when we think about those celebrity couples with the particularly large age gaps, we might think of George and Amal Clooney, or Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. But as you mentioned, Joe Collins earlier on, but also Cher and Sandra Bullock, J-Lo, Kylie Minogue all have quite a number of years on their current or previous partners. Now, the university, they did a study of 6,000 people, took part in their experiment, and those participants, well, they were matched with people who had similar interests and, of course, wanted the same type of relationship. And then they were all sent out on blind dates, and the study discovered that both genders showed a preference for younger partners. Now, as I said earlier on, women typically come out forward and they are, present the idea that they actually prefer older men. But as I spoke to various people on the streets of Glasgow today, not everybody was willing to be totally honest if we're to take the university's findings as gospel.
Do you ever consider yourself going for a toy boy?
No.
No. Why not? Absolutely.
I've never leant that way. I've always preferred an older man, more mature. I would find a younger man too immature for me.
Well, I would prefer an older man.
An older man? Why is that?
I think they've got more life experience.
It depends on a lot of things. It depends on personality and if you have a lot in common,
Do you think age is such a small part of it then?
I don't think age has anything to do with it. A lot of single people out there, I would just wonder what they would see in an older woman. Maybe a mother figure, which I wouldn't be happy with. That's how you saw me.
Now, you might know I'm a science guy, right? And it's fair to say that my pool of 5 women does not compare to 6,000 participants in that study. But, let's look at the numbers. 4 out of 5 of them said that, no, they preferred older men, except that rather feisty redhead I spoke to earlier on. But certainly, I think it's interesting that despite all that, obviously this study says that, women who are of a certain age, even with money, I think is quite interesting, that the money part actually plays no relevance to the situation at all. It plays no part in their appetite for younger men, or indeed younger men's appetite to be with older women. But, altogether, we have to kind of ask, the exception there certainly seems to be that a few of us need to get a little bit more in touch with what our real romantic feelings are in the dating game.
Tony Maguire, thank you very much. Yeah, they're lying when they say they don't care about the money. It's lies. It's lies. And anyway, if you said to anyone, would you prefer a slightly younger partner, most people might say, what would you say? Would you say yes? Yes?
Probably.
Someone said that to me, I would say, yeah, all right.
But when
there's a younger one going who's like wealthy and this and that, and all the things I want from a man.
I mean, there is a. It's sort of sad to point out, isn't it? But there is a peak of physical fitness, and then a sort of slow and inevitable decline.
Yes. This is the other issue, which we won't spell out to you, but you know.
Yeah, no, there is an age at which you can run 100 metres the fastest you will ever be able to run 100 metres, for want of a better metaphor.
Love it.
Well, goodness me, it's been a pleasure, Nana. Thanks so much for stepping in, and thank you at home for watching Good Afternoon Britain. But please don't go anywhere. The one and only Martin Daubney. He's up next, live from Westminster.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Another unsettled day ahead with heavy showers. These could be thundery at times, also still rather windy across the southwest, and temperatures around about average for the time of year across the country. And the reason for this unsettled weather is all because of this area of low pressure still swirling around the country, dragging in some heavy showers at times. Could be quite a wet day on offer, particularly across parts of Wales, parts of Lincolnshire, East Anglia, for example. This rain heavy at times, could even see some hail and thunder, particularly across the south. It might be a slightly drier day across parts of northern England, but still across coastal areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, still a fair few showers feeding in here too. As I say, temperatures around about average, if not rather mild across the south, but that being offset by all the heavy rain and the showers. To finish off the day then across Scotland, still plenty of showers moving through, these likely falling as snow across hills and still rather breezy around coastal areas too. Plenty of showers across Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be a little bit drier at times across northern parts of England, but for Wales, central and southern parts of England, still plenty of showers moving through, and still once again these turning rather heavy at times, and those strong winds still continuing across parts of the southwest. Overnight, however, we'll start to see a gradual ease of the showers, becoming more confined to southern counties as we head towards the morning. Still a fair few moving in across Scotland too, but across the central slice of the UK, largely turning drier. Should see a fair few clear spells overnight too, and that means it's likely to be a chillier night on offer as we head into tonight, particularly under those clearer skies away from the cloud. Heading into tomorrow, there should be more dry weather around, maybe even seeing some sunshine by the afternoon. That's away from the far south though, as we see another area of low pressure just start to drift some rain in through the English Channel, clipping southern counties as we head into the afternoon. Dry elsewhere, though we still can't rule out some showers, particularly around Scotland, still falling as snow across high ground.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go